Is Christian Braun on the trade block? Yes, but also not really. Let's talk about it. Welcome to What's in a Game. I'm Grace Jean here with my co-host Will Jones. How are you doing today, Will? On this fine Thursday following game 1 of the NBA Finals. We're finally here.
I'm glad the Knicks won last night, which I get some people aren't going to feel like that. When your team's out and you can pick a side for whatever sport, whatever sports league and their championship situation is, whether it's Super Bowl or World Series or whatever, if your team isn't in it and you still want to watch it, you're going to lean one way or the other. I'm leaning towards the Knicks. I don't like that Wemby is 22 and about to win his first finals. Their Western rival, which to me is enough to not like them. I was not excited to watch the game. I was just watching it like with a stone cold face, just like pissed off, not enjoying it. But then thankfully the Knicks.
That's how Will watches everything, guys.
Yeah. That's how I watch movies too. I'm like, what?
What bullshit are they trying to sell me today?
Yeah. And so it was a really exciting game though. So I had fun after it was over and the Knicks won, and I was like, wow, that was great. But if the Knicks had lost, I would have been not as excited to talk about it today.
I'm glad the Knicks won too. I'm rooting for the Knicks in this series. Kind of rooting. Like, I'll be happier if the Knicks win than if the Spurs win, but I don't feel nearly as strong as I did last season when it was Pacers Thunder, for example, when it's like not your team in the finals. And then when it was Mavs Celtics, I was like, this is just a bad outcome all around for me. So I feel like I was even more like removed from that one. But yeah, it's kind of nice not having like super strong, at least not super strong negative feelings toward the two teams in the finals, at least in my case. Because I'll be like, it's a cool story either way. And actually the more I've been thinking about it, like, oh wow, what if the Knicks actually do win? And that's like kind of devastating for guys like Fox and Harrison Barnes. Like the rest of the Spurs, you could be like, you guys are so young. Like you're going to be back here. Like it's not like, oh, the Nuggets are going to be back there in like 2023. They weren't that young. Wemby is 22 years old. Dylan Harper is a rookie. Stephon Castle is a second-year player in the NBA, right? But then you've got these other guys on the team that are like, this is probably like your shot, right? And so you think about those stories as well. And you know, now that the more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm like, the Knicks are an older team on average, but they don't have like old players. Not that Fox is an old player, but obviously Harrison Barnes is, and they've got, you know, some of the end of bench guys that get to be part of the run too, like Kelly Olynyk and Bismack Biyombo, although I don't think he's that old either. But the Knicks' oldest players are like their starters. They have a pretty young like end of bench. I guess like Jordan Clarkson would be the only one in that sort of, the guys that you think of that are kind of like the DeAndre Jordan, Ish Smiths, Jeff Greens of their kind of title attempt run, right? And so those are some of the players that I'm actually thinking about, which is crazy because you've got, Cat and Brunson and Wemby and all, like a title would absolutely change those guys' lives. But when you think about some of those other players for whom this is probably the last shot they'll get at a title or being on a title team, like those are the kinds of stories that I'm thinking about, which kind of tells you how like where I'm at in terms of like how invested I am in like the main player storylines with this finals, which is not that invested in like a good way, I think, because I think it's easier to enjoy the game. And we're definitely going to talk about that in our second segment. But overall, like they gave us fireworks in game one of the finals, right?
It was a close game and
Yeah.
a lot of runs and leads that were broken down and regained, and it was tied in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
I almost stopped watching in the third when the Spurs were up by 15 or whatever the hell it was, and when I saw it was tied in the fourth, I was like, oh, have to see how this ends. Who is going to actually show up and close? Because Brunson was cold at the start, and then the Spurs went on a run, and Brunson couldn't really hit anything either, and then it was just who's going to hit the first kind of big shot and throw a punch and not let someone back in. So
yeah,
it was fun.
For sure. All right, before we get started, please do us a favor, hit the like and subscribe buttons. Helps us out with the YouTube algo in this extended off-season period. It's so crazy because like our off-season has been going on for over a month now, and the playoffs are still going, and we're still weeks away from the draft and free agency and all of the fun parts of the off-season for an eliminated team. But speaking of off-season moves, I have a couple of news items here. Ray Von Hochshaw says, "Won't lie, I'm just happy the Thunder aren't involved." I completely agree. That's where I'm at. I'm like, I'm just kind of sit back and relax and try to enjoy the basketball on display. All right, first news item here. The Orlando Magic have a new head coach, and this had actually come out before last show, but I had missed it. Sean Sweeney, I believe he's currently the lead assistant for the San Antonio Spurs. I don't know too much about his offensive or defensive like philosophies in terms of like where he's at with his tenure for the team, but as somebody who was really concerned about how things went down in Orlando and like Jamal Mosley perhaps being a scapegoat for like player / roster issues, but also just like, okay, at some point these guys got to make a shot. Like the coach can't make them make shots. I really appreciated things that Jamal Mosley brought to the table in terms of like culture setting. And I like the idea of bringing in somebody from the Spurs that are like, if there's anything that the San Antonio Spurs are like known for, renowned for, it's their culture. And he's only been there for this year, this 1 year with the Spurs right now. He's coming from the Dallas Mavericks, and now that I think about it, I remember the announcement of when Mitch Johnson hired him as his lead assistant last summer, and it was kind of a mass exodus of guys from the Mavs last summer. This is obviously Nico being fired, and that the Mavericks organization was seeing a lot of attrition up and down the organization, from the coaches to training staff to medical personnel, and all kinds of guys were getting hired by other teams, and a lot of these guys come pretty highly recommended too. So yeah, I don't have any specific thoughts on Sweeney. I didn't really think about who some of the Orlando Magic candidates could be, because there weren't as many like sort of vaunted head coaching candidates out there once like Michael Malone got snapped up by UNC. for this cycle, like, you know, a couple cycles ago when it was like everybody wanted Kenny Atkinson's getting like, you know, 5 different interviews for a bunch of open positions. I'm curious to know if they had interviewed or if maybe he wasn't interested. Johnny Bryant from the Cavs, who seems to be another one that everybody's kind of on the lookout for. But it's interesting because I felt like in the NBA, like head like assistants when they got the opportunity would just kind of take whatever head coaching job is available, even if they were like highly sought after guys. Like I guess Atkinson was a couple cycles ago, or like Johnny Bryant kind of was, except like he's a interesting case to me, Johnny Bryant with the Cavs, because it seems like for the last 2 coaching cycles now, he's been like, I'm better than like the jobs that are left available at this point. And like this cycle seems like he probably wasn't interested in the Magic job, definitely wasn't interested in the Pelicans job, who by the way hired Jamal Mosley. And it kind of reminds me a little bit more of what happens in the NFL, where like some of these like really sought after or like up and comers, not highly sought after, but like really highly like rated coaching prospects will sort of wait out cycles to try to get the ideal position with an ideal team, an ideal organization, a team that has like a roster that they want to work with. Whereas I felt like in the past at the NBA, it was just like, you want one of these jobs, you take it, right? But it seems like, at least in the case of Johnny Bryant, he's waiting it out. And I kind of wonder if we're going to start to see that more. And I don't know why, but it feels different, that I feel like he probably could have had a head coaching job this season, if he wanted one of the ones that was available.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what this means for the Magic and their future and their direction. I did see something about how they were not interested in really trading anybody, which was disappointing. Not that I'm saying I want Nuggets Magic trade, but if
I
possibilities
would not
are shut,
listen to that, because they're about to get really expensive, and this is a team that does not want to pay the luxury tax. Like, I would be on the lookout for probably a Jalen Suggs trade somewhere.
Yeah, I think it was just they said Paolo and Franz wouldn't be traded, so Suggs would still technically be open
on the block. Yeah, for sure. Just to save on the long-term money. And the reason for the timing of that is not just like because of Jalen's struggles in the postseason, because arguably like he hasn't been that much worse than Franz if you combine like performance and availability, because Franz has also had his troubles, and then also the you know, kind of persistent injury problems. But it's more like everybody's deals are kicking in at the same time. Suggs was already starting his deal. It is a descending one, so I think he started at like 35 million, and maybe next season, let's see what he's going to be making, probably just under 32 million next season, 29 the next, 26 the next. So it's a descending deal. That's pretty good value if somebody wanted to take a swing. It's not great value. It's a long contract. That's the other thing, is like they gave him like that full like 5 years extension. It might be more difficult to move than you think. And it might be one of those things where you get to the end of the offseason. It's like, if the Magic didn't move Jalen Suggs, Denver's absolutely not moving Christian Braun. It's a similar situation with at least a player that has arguably a higher ceiling, at least on one end of the floor, right? But yeah, so Franz's rookie scale max it was already in effect, and so was Jalen's, because they were in the same draft class, and then Paolo's is kicking in next season as well. So they'll have kind of 3 max-ish level players. Not quite the same kind of pressure that Denver was under when it was Jokic, Jamal, and MPJ a couple of years ago, because none of them are on the 35% super max, and none of them are on 30% veteran maxes. These are kind of that 25% of the cap rookie scale maximum, which is still a lot of money. It's one of those things that like puts you in danger of going over the luxury tax, but not necessarily is going to push you into second apron territory right away. So that's the difference between players that are, in that, stage of their career, and also, obviously supermax for guys that are on a different tier there in terms of production and impact. But yeah, I'm curious to see what Sean Sweeney is going to want to do with Orlando on both ends of the floor, and hopefully can maintain the positive aspects of that culture there. I don't know how he's going to make them make shots, but you never know. All right, second news item here. This one is pretty big. It actually dropped, I think, during our show, and I got the second half of it. I didn't realize that Daryl Morey was going to be out from the Philadelphia 76ers front office, though. The news that dropped, that I saw the headline while I was kind of maintaining this, little dashboard here during our stream, was that someone had been hired to be president of basketball operations in Philadelphia, but I didn't see the accompanying headline about Morey being out. I thought maybe they're just promoting him or whatever. I was surprised to see this from Philadelphia, to be honest. If there was ever a time to fire Daryl Morey, right now, I don't think would have been it. A lot of people are online or how could you trade Jared McCain? I'm he traded Jared McCain because OKC actually coughed up draft capital. Okay. I can't point to a series of bad moves that Daryl Morey has made recently. If there was going to be a time to really try to, I feel like it would have been a couple of years ago after the Harden experiment, and how that ended, because it put Philly in a rougher spot. But has Daryl Morey done anything in the last couple of years that is anything near the stuff that we've been talking about with the Denver front office that weren't even the things that led to Calvin Booth being fired, for example?
I mean, getting Paul George.
But everybody wanted Paul George. I'm sure ownership wanted Paul George too.
I don't think they look at it like that, unfortunately. It's too unfair. It's hey, you did this move, and even if we understood it at the time, it didn't work, and now we're stuck with this, so goodbye.
Let me see how many years Paul George has left on his deal. I think it's 2. I think it was only a 4-year. Yeah, it's 2 years. They have next season and then a player option the year after that. I actually thought he played okay in the playoffs. He just wasn't a max player, and he's making over 32% of the cap right now. And that's, that's tough. But they've got all these young contracts. He's exceptionally good at drafting dynamic guards. That's just
the drafts have been good.
Can Denver hire him for our scouting department?
Head scout.
We haven't had a dynamic guard drafted since
Bones. Who are you counting as a dynamic guard? I don't know.
A guard who's Bones, I guess.
Bones didn't really work out, obviously, and he's still finding his way, but so you could count him or not.
Before him, was it Jamal?
Yeah.
When was Will Barton drafted? He's more like a wing.
Before Jamal.
Still. So it would be. That's crazy. That's crazy. Was Moutier drafted before or after Jamal? Was it before?
I think right.
I think
before.
Jamal was the year after Jokic, no?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it wasn't. It must have been after.
I think Moutier was just before Jamal. Maybe it was the same year as Jokic.
Well, Jokic was the 3 from Jokic's class were Gary Harris, Nurkic, and Jokic. That's how I.
Oh.
And that was 2015, and then Jamal was 2016.
Yeah.
So Moutier had to have been after.
No, Moutier was before. You just said it was 2015. Moutier came in.
Moutier came in
before Jamal.
But 2015 was Jokic's draft year. That's what I'm saying.
I think Moutier and Jokic was the same year.
Okay, we're getting live Fact checking here. What position did they draft Moody at? Because I thought
He was like the first pick for the
seventh
Nuggets
overall
that year.
pick.
Yeah.
Oh wait, Jokic was drafted in 2014 then, right?
Was he? Don't even remember.
Unless.
Yeah, it was 2014.
Okay,
so it was
that's
just
what it
the year
was.
before Moody. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's what happened. My bad. Anyway, yeah, Daryl Morey drafts Danny guard, gets fired by the 76ers. One of the things that you could criticize him for and that I've criticized him for is his inability to get any kind of substantial, like big athletes on that team. They are like completely allergic to forwards. It's actually like I can't think of one that they've had since Ben Simmons.
Yeah, I don't know.
That could be like a starting caliber player, which is kind of crazy because you have two forward positions that you could start. And like Paul George was going to be the closest to that, but he's like more of a skill player. So like that would be something that you could criticize him for in terms of roster building, but ownership didn't really seem to care until I don't know. So I would be very curious about the dysfunction that led to that firing because it's the Philadelphia 76ers and you can bet there was dysfunction involved in any decision that they make. So that was a pretty shocking headline to me, but now they've got a new president of basketball operations whose name escapes me because I actually didn't write that one down. I just wrote down that Daryl Morey was out.
Daryl Morey just is a unique kind of
I should
guy.
know his name because we're gonna have to potentially try to think of deals that would appeal to this person as an option for Denver.
Yeah, I feel like Daryl Morey can rub people the wrong way sometimes. Very specific kind of dude.
Yes, like James Harden.
James Harden. Even Embiid had comments that he was not happy with the McCain trade. I don't know if that factored into stuff. It's like, are they really listening to Embiid and making decisions off of his opinions? I mean, I know he is the big guy there, but he is injured and is struggling. I don't know if they're ever going to pivot off of him, try to trade him, or maybe they can't trade him. I guess they probably can't. I don't know. It would be hard to imagine a team trying to take on his contract when he's injured all the time, but you never know.
Well, I mean, at this point, they haven't extended him yet. Oh God, he's got 3 years left, including a player option on that deal. Yeah, that's not going anywhere. Because for that size of a contract, you need a player that you either think can be healthy, or you could catch lightning in a bottle and have like a Kawhi 2019 type run. But even when he's been healthy, or at least playably healthy, it looks really rough on the court in the postseason. So that's not the kind of risk that you would take on for that player. This was another aspect of the story that I had forgotten. So ESPN, Shams had originally reported this out with ESPN. Bob Myers was involved in the search for the new president of basketball operations. I'm trying to remember, are the 76ers owned by the same ownership group as the Washington Commanders?
I don't know.
Because I think that Bob Myers is involved in that organization. And maybe they were like, maybe he's kind of like their Kevin Demoff, like the Cronkies have with KSE kind of thing. Who kind of like has his hands in all the different, sports teams. But I could be wrong about, let's see, Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment. Let's see. We have all these different sports
Sixers,
fiefdoms.
Commanders.
Yep.
Josh
Okay.
Harris owner. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So I was like, oh, Bob Myers, he's transitioning over to football. That's random, but whatever. But, I guess a lot of the networking translates, and he helped find their new guy who, for whatever reason, I can't easily find and scanning this article. The article is similarly about Daryl Morey being out and not really about the new guy who came in. Oh, Morey also signed Paul George and Joel Embiid to massive contracts. People like me are the ones that criticize that last Embiid extension. Nobody in Philadelphia really batted an eye at that, because what option did you have when Embiid was running out? And I think he signed that extension. It must not have been the summer of 2023 after he and Harden went out in that Game 7 against Boston, because that was the summer when he was kind of doing his little talk show tour and being like, I want to win, whether it's in Philadelphia or elsewhere, whatever. I think he signed the extension the following summer, which might have been the pre-Olympic summer. Or was that the Olympic summer?
Might have been before.
Let me see. I can just look at the transaction history and see. Fine, suspended, signed. Okay, extension in 2024. So it was the next summer. It was the Olympic summer that he signed that. And everyone was like, we're keeping Joel. You know, that's kind of what you do at that point. So if you're not going to extend the guy, your MVP caliber player, you're going to trade him. And I don't think that they had a stomach to trade him at that point. So it was going to be an extension, and it was going to be an extension for the full amount of years that you could sign an extension for, because that's the caliber of player he was. So that was like not a Morey, oh my gosh, decision kind of thing.
Yeah,
I always find it
you're going
funny.
to give that to the MVP guy.
I always find it funny when you get these sort of very hasty postmortems on these firings, because you have all these competing agendas for like why a guy got fired, and they always include a bunch of things that I disagree. I'm like, there are legitimate grounds to critique this guy on, and instead you're kind of resorting to things that are kind of non-issues. But yeah, one day I'll learn the name of the new president of basketball operations for the Philadelphia 76ers. That day might be today, but after this stream.
Okay.
Do you have a comment?
Well, CT has a question, and we are going to talk about Christian Braun, so maybe we can kind of answer this and then go into the CB chat.
All right, let's get to our main segment of the show today. Are the Nuggets trading Christian Braun? Kind of answered it at the top of the show. The answer is probably no, but I want to read this excerpt from Mark Stein's The Stein Line, NBA insider. He's very well connected and well sourced throughout the league. Get lots of trade rumors and various teams kind of putting out what their intent is going to be heading into various off seasons. And he had some notes on the Denver Nuggets. Quote, there's a growing belief league-wide that the Nuggets will explore their potential trade options with Christian Braun as well as Cam Johnson in a bid to create financial flexibility for matching offers to restricted free agent Peyton Watson and perhaps further retooling of Nikola Jokic's supporting cast. You know, I've read this statement before, and that sentence hits differently as I'm reading it live for a couple of reasons. First thing, Will, did you see, these quotes from Steinlein circulating? And I know there was another article from like Bond Temps a couple days ago that implied that Christian Braun trade options were also being explored. And I was kind of like, yeah, and I'm exploring options to, take a trip to insert Japan. It's very expensive to visit, and I do not have the money to do that. I am also window shopping today. But was your reaction to that like, yeah, I'm sure they are exploring options, or were you thinking that this was more like, who is this signaling for?
I know, it's like your mind runs through all those scenarios. I remember seeing the Bond Temps report, and mostly it was to talk about, these are all talking about Peyton Watson and trying to make room for him, and it's always Cam.
Room in Stan's wallet, to be clear.
Yeah, room in Stan's wallet. And so yeah, I shrugged it off as like Snoozer is pointing out in a sarcastic way. It's just like, yeah, of course the front office should absolutely monitor any possible trades that they could do for CB. Doesn't mean that it's possible. But then we kept getting more kind of noise around it, and there was some like fake account that was talking about how the Nuggets want to trade CB to the Bulls, and we will talk about the Bulls. But the more I see about CB and the Nuggets like considering this, and then we've talked about Dan Favale talking about it, whether or not you agree with him or not, and he was like legitimately considering like what the Nuggets would have to include to trade him and what that might look like. And it's like, I don't know, different kinds of people are thinking it's more realistic than others. I kind of think I've always thought it wasn't realistic. But if there's any way they can get off of him, even if you're like taking back a bunch of, I don't know. I guess I'm just thinking if you traded CB and you had to take back really bad money and or losing lots of assets, I mean, we're already so thin on what we can trade in terms of picks. Is there any way you could like shoot yourself in the foot on a CB trade?
Yes, because the way you shoot yourself in the foot is by trying to trade Christian at like his rock bottom value.
Yeah.
And it's a big contract. Like they did this last year when they ended up trading MPJ and in 2032 just to move off of not even all of his money, like 17 million of his money, the difference between what he and Cam make. Or I guess 34 million of his money, I guess you could say, because they both had 2 years left on his deal, but like on their deals. But if they end up just salary dumping Cam Johnson, that doesn't really apply. Ray, we are going to talk exactly about the cycle of manufacturing negative assets. We are going to talk about that, okay? But the other part of this sentence that jumped out of me, literally as I was reading it live, was, and this is actually most likely Mark Stein's kind of editorializing, not necessarily like the specifics of what Denver's been relaying. But the way that he talks about it is that they're trying to, quote, create financial flexibility. We've already talked about the propaganda of that and how this is just about not having to pay massive repeater tax penalties. There aren't any specific roster building things that they are planning on or want to do in the immediate future, or even could do, frankly, with their limited positive assets that would be restricted if they went into the second apron. It's mainly that they would have massive repeater tax penalties that they would have to pay. But then create financial flexibility for matching offers to restricted free agent Peyton Watson, and perhaps for the retooling of Nikola Jokic's supporting cast. This could be and is likely Mark Stein editorializing, but it heavily implies, if you want to read into it, that this is a lot like coming from like a team source, heavily implies that they believe that substantial offer sheets will be given to Peyton in the first place. Or this like stuff, this is like a conglomeration of information that he's getting from team sources, agents affiliated with Clutch Sports, who is Peyton Watson's agency. And then the last part of the line about perhaps further retooling of Jokic's supporting cast. Like, yeah, we'll see. That flexibility for matching offers is interesting because it's like there's no guarantee that there will be even offers to match. I would have expected that sentence to read, assuming the propaganda about financial flexibility was going to be there, that they would need financial flexibility for paying Peyton Watson, not matching offers necessarily. So that stands out to me live. The rest of this statement, or the rest of Mark's reporting here, just reads, Johnson, Cam, is naturally seen as much more movable than Brown, with just 1 season left on his contract at $23 million. Next season, meanwhile, will be year 1 on the 5-year, $125 million contract extension that Brown received in October. Among the factors league sources say, which led to that deal, Braun is routinely described in Denver as one of Jokic's favorite teammates. This and SGA's comments about OKC's necessity for Lou Dort sparked a round of memes about how the best players in all these teams seem to have their favorite guy on the team be somebody that has little to do with winning. I'm putting that very generously, more so than the memes would indicate. But you guys can extrapolate from there.
Hey, Jokic likes CB. Other teams. That's endorsement from the man himself.
Endorsement from the best player in the league, potentially, depending on how you're assessing, that tier list following the stunning collapse of the Oklahoma City Thunder in the Western Conference Finals.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people just putting Wemby there. And I'm like, the defense has been spectacular. The offense has been really good at times. But I didn't even know he had 6 turnovers in the game in game 1, by the way. We'll get to it. Yeah, so that is the reporting that combined with the Bontemps article from ESPN this week that sparked a round of conversation about whether Christian Braun could actually be on the chopping block or the trade block. Because previously it was believed that Christian Braun's deal is too difficult to move. I happen to think that. I happen to agree with that statement. It's too long. We said it at the time of the extension. We said it before we knew what kind of year Christian would have. It is not about how well he played. You give a 5-year deal to a player you want to keep long term. And that would go along with what is stated here at the end of Mark's reporting that says, one of the factors that led to the deal that he got is that Christian is one of Jokic's favorite teammates. And when they say one of, is it okay, it's AG and then CB, or is it AG, Jamal, maybe 1 or 2 other guys and then CB? When you say one of, that might be doing a lot of work. I'm curious, but we all know
one of his favorite.
We've thought of Christian as one of Jokic's favorite guys on the team. That's been the case for a couple of years now. That's pretty evident, or had been evident in the past. I would say that it probably didn't feel that way as much for large stretches of this season, and that's in part because of Christian's injury and just not being on the floor, but also you could see a lot more visible frustration from Jokic at some of what Christian does or doesn't do, and didn't do on the court this year. And honestly, to those moments, I say Jokic, you've been talking for years about the thing that you like this guy is that he's low mistake. How do you think he gets to low mistakes? He's hesitant as, it's a lot. So it's interesting that that is being cited. I wonder if that is something that Ben Tenzer and perhaps Kevin Demoff talked to Jokic about when they had him over to to their box at the Arsenal. Was it the European League final they were at, the one against the Paris Football Club?
It was the Champions League final.
Ray says blaming Jokic for the GM making bad calls. Good point. That is a really good point. That is the equivalent of, Rob Pelinka blaming LeBron for the Russ thing. And it's well, yeah, he was heavily involved in getting all that together, but you ultimately made the call. Mm-hmm. Right. And I would put that in a different category than we just talked about, Daryl Morey and the Paul George of it all. It's it's not like he was the only one that wanted this. Everybody was on board with it. Whereas in the case of the Russ thing, it was everybody thought that was a bad idea, and gutting your depth to get another max player and a guard not shooting, or not a respected shooting guard next to a LeBron and Anthony Davis that was going to eat up a lot of your cap was going to be bad for the Lakers. I think a lot of people were this is not going to work out. And then they did it anyway. In the case of Christian, it wasn't don't pay him. It was you need to, if you want the flexibility to move this deal, for me, the length of the deal bothers me a lot more than the average annual salary, although I don't like that number either, and I made that very clear last summer, because you didn't get any concessions in terms of a team option or whatever. Like, that's a number that I think would have necessitated some concessions on their side, on the player side. But if you want to be able to move the deal, it needs to be shorter. They didn't get a shorter deal. They got a longer deal. That's a deal that you give to a player you're trying to keep. That's just like how it is. I cannot remember the last time a player was traded with 5 years left on their contract. I actually can't think of one this CBA or last.
I know. I'm just hoping people are getting so desperate to a degree with how locked down things are in terms of what you can do to build and to rebuild, that
like Denver's the desperate trade, one. But
like, yeah, I'm just hoping there's other desperate
make a trade, but they're going to have to attach positive assets to get it done in the form of, because they don't have multiple draft picks that they can trade right now. It would have to be draft picks and good players, question mark. Why do you think Zeke is still on this team? Like, obviously Christian is a better player than Zeke with like a higher, but like Christian's contract is worse right now, right? In terms of trade value. So very annoying. All that being said, okay, I was putting some trades through the trade machine together that were both, some of my own ideas and also inspired by some ideas from Nuggets fans on Twitter. And I was very surprised to see that no Denver Nuggets, 0 Denver Nuggets were in the top 25 players through the trade machine over the last, I think they look at like the last week. And that's not a product of like, oh, well, the teams that just got eliminated are the ones in there, because it wasn't filled with like Thunder and Cavs players. It was like very evenly distributed across the league. Actually, there were some Raptors. They might have had like a Cavs player, but it wasn't dominated by a couple of teams at all. And one of the things that I was curious to see if these articles had like sparked a round of like throwing Christian Braun into the trade machine, and it seemed like not, which, like I said, definitely surprised me. I wanted to see here if I could find just wanted to name some of the players that are in there. Trey Murphy, Tyler Hero. You do have Lou Dort in there. I think he's the only Thunder player in the top 20. Hartenstein's at 21. No, which is funny because the Thunder have like actively started putting out there that they're trying to move guys like Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins. But they're not being, they're not like popular in the trade machine right now, at least among fans. Got a couple of the Bucks. Giannis kind of stays at number 1 when there's not like an immediate, consensus guy. Giannis just kind of stays there because he perpetually puts himself in trade talks. Kyrie Irving, De'Aaron Fox, who is still actively competing in the NBA Finals, is number 4 in the trade machine right now. He's the only.
Did that just happen overnight after last night's game? No,
I think he was. I think he was there.
He didn't have the best game.
He was really rough in the OKC series as a scorer. I think people have actually been too harsh on him. I'm more of the Matt Moore view on De'Aaron Fox in these playoffs, and I could be a really harsh critic of Fox in the past because I think that sometimes he gets compared to some guards that I don't think he's quite on the level of. But I think that while he struggled with scoring, he's kind of been like pretty good at everything else. Despite the ankle injury that caused him to miss a game last round. What were you going to say?
I don't think people are out there using trade machines on Nuggets people. I just don't think they're that interested. I think
Well, a lot
we've
of the
been
time,
talking
it's
about.
not guys that like people want. It's guys that teams are trying to get rid of. Like Karis LeVert isn't here,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, any Nuggets trade is just so hard. It's a sad reality.
Oh, Cam Johnson popped up in the top 25 overnight. He's up to
I mean, he
22.
should.
He's up to 22.
It's
He
like
was
one
not
of the
there
most
last night.
guaranteed like trade pieces. Not saying again, I don't want to trade him, but he's a tradable piece, so it's very easy to experiment with throwing him in.
Yes. Okay, so let's talk about some of the trade ideas for Christian Braun that have been brought up before we get into Denver's vicious cycle, which I will have a rant about. So Critique Nick on X promised I would definitely cite him with respect to this trade. Had this idea that was, quote, Christian plus Cam plus the 2026 pick for Jalen Smith and Filler, and then Cam gets rerouted to the Pistons, and Nuggets get Ron Holland back kind of in return for that. I had to come up with my own, filler in this one, so I just went ahead and gave Denver Trey Jones because the Bulls don't have a lot of like bigger contracts to kind of make up the money there. So I just kind of picked a guy, and I was like, well, we'll take a point guard and we'll give you a point guard. Jalen Pickett only has 1 year left on his deal, so like let us deal with Trey Jones's contract. Trey Jones is obviously a better player, more reliable, kind of NBA, like has gotten minutes on an NBA floor. Coaches seem to like that guy. And then to help facilitate this deal, like I said, the Bulls get the 2026 pick, which I think is interesting because I don't know if the Pistons want to do like a Cam Johnson, Ron Holland swap 1-for-1. But when you think of like Cam is the better player right now, and what you would try to capitalize on with that one is that the Pistons so desperately want to improve offensively immediately. They're like, we gotta do something about our spacing. So we get rid of one of our worst spacers and get a much better, more consistent spacer in Cam Johnson, who can also maybe be like a tertiary creator around Cade and maybe whoever else we try to go for this summer, depending on how aggressive they want to be, without compromising our defense too much. Obviously, Ron Holland is one of their better defenders, and Cam Johnson is not going to be at that level, but he's not going to be like a gaping hole in your defense necessarily. And you don't have to give up a, pick just to get Cam Johnson for nothing. So it's really, I don't think the Pistons would do that swap, but if they did, that would be the logic behind it, kind of thing. So what do you think of this deal?
I mean, I would love it if it would happen for sure.
One of the things I've been looking at as a result of a suggestion by Ryan Blackburn, I was watching one of his streams on Mile High Sports the other day, is the concept of like make sure you get multiple players back, even if you're saving money in the deal, because there's even if you were dealing with like a straight cap space team, you can't just kind of give them all the bad salary. Even if they wanted to take on all the bad salary, there's like a limit to how like the gap in the salary that they can take back versus what they're sending out, even if they have cap space, which is like kind of weird. But this new CBA just makes everything difficult for no reason.
Very strict.
But if you take back multiple players, and like instead of like one with like for if it was Cam, for example, just Cam, for Ron Holland, that's like a what is that, a $14 million salary gap approximately, and then you could take back, I think part of the matching money there would be Paul Reed. Oh yeah, I can just look at the Pistons, or Paul Reed and Marcus Sasser. It means you don't have to pay more players minimums on the back end, potentially.
Yeah, you're already like filling it out with guys.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you have to take back that amount of money anyway, it may as well also fulfill some of those roster requirements too, which I hadn't been paying as much attention to in our previous rounds of trade talks, where it was kind of like maybe you trade 2 guys for 3, but otherwise you're not breaking up like one contract into like 3 or in this case it's 1 for 3. Cam and the Pistons players we get back. Obviously, the main positive for Denver here is getting off of Christian Braun's contract. I think this is if you were going to salary dump, if you're going to use the 2026 first round pick to salary dump, this is kind of how I'd want to do it, where you're getting multiple players back that could be part of your rotation. It's a little different with the Bulls players because it's really only Jalen Smith you can count on. I don't know that how often Trey Jones would be in our rotation, but he could be like our Tyus Jones. I mean, literally brothers replacement.
Yeah. Another Jones. That'd be 3 Jones as like a depth if we keep Tyus.
Yeah, I don't think they'd keep Tyus if they brought in Trey in a trade. That'd be kind of awkward.
Super bad. Who would you see as the starting lineup then in this scenario? You got Jokic. I don't know where you.
Well, you'd have it would be Jokic, AG, Jamal, Peyton, and here's the other thing with this deal: the Ron Holland of it all specifically is. I don't like this idea, but if they were going to super cheap out, they could maybe even offer some swaps to the Pistons that wouldn't be, I don't know, like terrible, because the Pistons probably think they're going to be pretty good for the next couple of years to try to like grease the wheels on this deal. But if you get Ron Holland, you don't have to worry as much about letting Peyton go on the defensive side. The thing is, like, Peyton has probably more two-way upside than Ron Holland does, but you never know. Ron Holland really just had was this his rookie season? No, it was his sophomore season in the NBA, right?
I think so.
I don't think he was drafted last year. Checking. He was drafted in 2024. Yeah. So I don't know how much he's going to be offensively.
Yeah.
But you're like, well, we got another defensive wing at least, so we're not like as desperate to keep Peyton for that part of what our roster needs. I still think like secondary creation, tertiary creation is very important for this team, on ball stuff. And I'm not even sure that Peyton necessarily fulfills that, to be clear. But he showed flashes of being able to do that.
The idea is he'll be able to do that and continue and improve.
So that's the other upside for, like, I mean, there's nothing bad about this for Denver, to be honest. You gave up a 2026 pick and you get like a lottery guy in Ron Holland. You get off of Cam's money and Christian's money. You potentially open up some room to pay Peyton. But you also don't have to if you don't want to, because now you've got a little bit more in the way of like Jalen Smith, Ron Holland as like athletic guys that you don't, that you're like, okay, we're not going to be like completely, we won't have a complete dearth of athletes on this team if we let Peyton walk or just sign and traded him for something else, kind of thing. So I like this deal because it gives Denver a lot of flexibility. I think it would be really hard to go through because I don't think that Detroit wants to do a 1-for-1 swap of Cam Johnson. But maybe the bigger obstacle, and probably the bigger obstacle, would be trying to get the Bulls to take on Christian Braun's contract, his 5-year, $125 million contract for a 2026 late first round pick.
Yeah, I mean, that's always that's going to be the
thing, right?
But if it were to happen, I mean, you're sending out 2 starters in Christian and Cam, but getting off of CB is a big move. Getting off, like, we're kind of, I mean, we have RX Smart in the chat almost every week talking up Christian Braun. He's not in the chat right now, but Nuggets fans have been really low on Christian Braun, whether you think that's fair or not. Moving him and using that huge contract to then shift the mode of what the Nuggets look like is a huge deal. And I'm so lenient on almost any trade idea if it would happen, just because it's almost so hard to imagine.
They won't happen because it's too much money to move for like not enough draft asset. And this is one of the things with these long deals and why they don't move is that if you have a bad contract on your hands, nobody wants to take it. So in order to move it, you have to give up so much draft capital that your fans would revolt at having to give up that much draft capital just to get off of a bad contract, right?
I don't think the Nuggets have enough. Even if they like sold the farm on assets or whatever, like I don't know that there's enough to convince somebody.
But even if they had the asset, they like a team won't be willing, like the psychological part. And I like, you might be correct, frankly, as an organization to be like, no, we're not going to give up 2 future first round picks just to get off of bad money right now for a player that we think will probably have at least some level of like comeback from like the low point that they're at. Although again, I want to make it very clear that my critique of Christian Braun's contract is less to do with who he is as a player. Like the thing with a player like Christian,
God, yeah.
How good would Christian Braun have to be for a 5-year deal at third, fourth starter money, third, fourth option money? How good would he have to be for that contract to be a positive value?
God, I know. He'd have to be so good.
That's what I'm saying, right?
Why is it so long? Ugh. Don't give long contracts.
That's what I'm saying. It's like not about the player. It's about the like you
fourth and fifth level players.
You put yourself in a position to where you like the player has to achieve like an 80 to 90th percentile outcome just for the deal to be neutral within a year or two. If you're lucky, right? Like it's not a good way. It's not a good way to
Snoozer
to
said he'd have to be an all defense guy.
Even so, like I'm thinking of other players who are on these types of deals that other teams like really want. And it's like Trey Murphy, who's not an all defense guy. He's not all NBA. He's not an all-star, but he's like this very versatile player that a lot of teams can sort of theoretically get behind. Christian's not, and he wasn't last year either. That's why it didn't like this contract didn't really make sense to me. The length of it doesn't make sense for anything if you want to be a team that has quote unquote flexibility, but the actual average annual value put him on a tier of players that are a lot of guys that teams can kind of theoretically get behind, even at, to varying degrees of actual success, but they can say like, oh, you have this skill set and that one, and you've shown, these inconsistent flashes. Maybe you have an injury history in the case of Trey Murphy. But Christian had not yet achieved even those heights. I think that Dyson Daniels was probably overrated last year, but he got the contract that he got because he played good enough defense that enough people could be tricked to give him second on their defensive player of the year ballots to, raise his profile. That's not the level of player that Christian was even last year when he was scoring 15 points a game on, in transition.
Yeah.
He was basically fulfilling a Josh Hart archetype for close to Jaden McDaniels money.
I know, it's wild. I mean, and he would, in just even compared to KCP, he'd have to be better than what KCP was. Can't remember what KCP's contract was when we traded.
20. Bruce was 22. I think KCP was 22. I can check on that.
Well, Bruce wasn't 20. Well, he was a minimum.
No. I meant like when he got his Pacers.
I just meant when he was on our team.
Oh, like KCP was making 13 million.
13. Oh my God.
Right. That's, that's why he
that
he wanted
is like
to get paid.
Crazy value.
Yeah, KCP's making just under 22 million. He's got a player option for
He'd
this
have to
upcoming
be
season. I think he's going to pick that up.
like a better defender than KCP and a better or like this an equal shooter. Because like yeah, KCP's value he deserved more than what he got at the time for sure.
But he does more dirty work stuff, Will. Or
Yeah.
whatever the hell internal
Well,
metric is
yeah.
Calvin Booth was looking
He
at.
does dirty work for a starter at a shooting guard position. Whereas like CB did dirty
But he
work when
doesn't
he
do
was
the
just like a
not dirty
rookie.
work of a shooting guard, like shooting or like playing well at the point of attack consistently. So it's like, okay, thanks for all the rebounds, but like anyway, even despite that, I don't actually think that Christian's average annual value on his contract should be that much lower than what they gave him. The bigger problem is the length of the deal. I really want to drive that home because it is not about the quality of the player. It is about the structure of the contract being pretty brutal to a project of roster flexibility. Forget the financial aspect of it, but just roster flexibility, like the ability to move around different parts of your roster in order to create new configurations. And you know what? On the average annual value point, I think that also hurts roster flexibility because once you start making and like breaking that like 20 million a year mark, suddenly you're somebody that like can't be coming off the bench unless your name is Nas Reed, which I think is like great because he's been great for the Timberwolves off the bench, right? But they have a different kind of contract distribution on that team, so you have more guys in the middle.
But also Nas is like so tradable.
Yeah, well, he's
so nice.
He's real. Maybe Christian could achieve that. Nas is kind of in that like Trey Murphy league, to be honest, where it's like a lot of teams could like theoretically get behind a player like that, regardless of like what the overall impact is, because they're like, well, you can do all these different things, and you give us a level of like versatility in how we deploy you. Christian can kind of only play one way. And that was true last year, too, even in his good year. And I think that that was sort of overlooked in, how they structured this contract. But it's not just that Denver gave it to him. It's like why it's difficult to move. So if you could bring up the alternative Bulls trade that I included here. So this one was a little bit more of like a wish casting one where it was just a deal with the Bulls and it was just to get off of Christian Braun's contract and Zeke's contract. In this, my alternative fantasy here, the Chicago Bulls are like really high on Zeke Naji for some reason. So we would include him and the 2026 to move Christian's contract. And I firmly believe that if they can't move Zeke Naji this summer with only 2 years left on his deal, including a player option, to be fair, he's just going to be here until the end of his contract.
Yeah, this is the last. Like, although they could maybe trade him with one, because then it's like someone could try him.
I don't think so.
Really?
I
okay.
don't think so. To be completely honest with you,
God,
just because the contract is small enough that like the difference between 1 and 2 years shouldn't be that big, but for some reason it seems to be. The Bulls are. I want to preface this by saying the Bulls are absolutely not going to do this deal, and they shouldn't. Unless they're really high on Christian Braun. Like that's really what it is. It's not really about them being high on Zeke Naji. It's like the Bulls are really high on Christian Braun. They want to pair him with Matas and just have like another athletic wing out there with Josh Giddey. And in exchange, they would just give us like, you can have Isaac Okoro. We just traded Lonzo Ball for him. And we'll give you Jalen Smith.
The Bulls also do have a new front office.
They do.
Keeping this in mind for people, because the guy who was sending Alex Caruso to a contender, and what else did they do? What other dumb things did the Bulls do? Anyway, he's gone.
Not trading guys that just they traded Io for, I thought, like decent value given that they were going to lose him, but they could have traded Io sooner and probably given what they got for Io, they probably could have gotten more, and not
they could
like that's not how I was thinking about it at the time. I thought they got for Io basically what I thought they were going to get for Io a year prior. But they got that for him when he was about to become an unrestricted free agent. Like, I actually thought the Wolves overpaid, to be honest. But the fact that the Wolves overpaid makes me think like maybe someone else would have overpaid more a year earlier.
They should have driven up the value and gone for more. That was absurd.
They didn't trade Vooch at the peak of his value. They didn't trade Andre Drummond for like a couple seconds to a team that just like needs a backup center to rebound. He went to free agency, I'm pretty sure, and that's how he ended up with Philly. What did they trade? They actually got a pretty good return for Levine, I thought, because they got their pick back. I think that was the pick that became Matas. I could be wrong about that.
That's interesting.
So that's something. Yeah, but this is like a fantasy trade that isn't going to happen.
This would be like celebrating in the streets kind of a thing.
Yeah.
For Nuggets fans. Sorry. These are like the three guys that are still like giving Nuggets fans headaches.
And I didn't even go, I'm going to be clear, I didn't go after these players because, let me just like, here's all our crap for all your good players. It's more like the Bulls don't have a lot of contracts that are big enough to make the money work. These were the only guys that do because they have so many rookies on that team now. So I would have happily taken like whatever guys that were filler, but they don't have a lot of filler that aren't Patrick Williams, who I'm not taking back in a deal, right? That's the kind of compromise that you could try to make with a team if you were to say like, okay, we'll give you this bad money contract with a player that probably has some upside, but we need to get off this money in exchange for one of your like bad contracts, but that is less bad than the one we're giving you with a player that you probably think has less upside. In this case, Patrick Williams. I don't want to take back Patrick Williams. There's a reason that the Bulls haven't been able to move him. But if Denver was like, well, we need guys, and Patrick Williams only has, I want to say 3 years left on his contract. It might be 2. I think it's 3 though. Patrick, he has 3, including a player option. That's tough. So that would be the kind of deal with the devil that you make if you wanted to move a bad contract.
Yeah. I'm also curious with all these trades if kind of like then what falls from that, because like you're sending Cam and CB and you're taking back a lot of players because he's broken up into smaller contracts. Like what happens with a Straw there and a Deron Holmes at the back end of the roster, who Ray in the chat earlier was talking about next season maybe needing to just like bite the bullet and give those guys more run, but you're obviously not going to be able to do that if you're bringing back even more players to be in the rotation, which is what the Nuggets kind of need. We need more like solid contributors. You definitely don't want to be like taking chances on guys in Jokic's contending window, but
play better.
What can you do?
Play better.
So you think they just haven't earned it?
Play better or do whatever the hell the coaches want you to do. And if they don't want to play you, then ask to get traded. I don't know what to say. If they haven't been able to get run to this point, with especially last year with all the injuries we had, the fact that Deron did not play tells me that Deron's just never going to play here in Denver.
Yeah, that's why it's like
he never, when he got on the floor, did anything that made me go like, oh my God, this guy cannot see the floor again. And that should have been the bar in a season where literally every other forward on the roster had some significant injury throughout the season. And oftentimes it was 2 of those forwards at a time on a roster that, by the way, lacks like true depth at that position, even when everybody is healthy. So it's like, it's not, if they didn't play then, like Deron is like the kind of prime example of this. If he didn't play then, like, I don't know what else he can do. right? Tore it up in the G League, like did all the thing. Like there was no like, and it's like find a place for him. You don't have to play him at the 5 if you think that he can't handle like NBA center physicality. Like, but we were playing Tyus Jones in the NBA playoffs. And I'm not saying to play Duran in the playoffs necessarily, right? He is a rookie, is mistake prone, all this stuff. You want to trust your veterans. I don't care. Fine, whatever. But at a time when Spencer Jones, Peyton Watson, and Aaron Gordon all had overlapping injuries, and Duran Holmes got sent back to the G League, it was like, well, what are we doing here? Right? Like, there's nothing that I can say at that point. It's not like the coaches or like it's the whole organization at that point.
Yeah, maybe they were trying to avoid that kind of a thing. It was always a fight over front office and coach who should be playing and all that. Maybe that, they weren't as willing to advocate for a player, especially since Ben Tenzer and John Wallace don't seem to be in like that powerful position.
Well, that's great. Then we're living in friggin' Stalinist Russia or something. Or Soviet Union. Ravon Hackshaw says, maybe we can get over our preconceived notions and play the guys. I mean, in another universe, he's talking about some socialist utopia where everybody gets a chance. Give me a break, Ray. Like, what are we talking about?
But I mean, on some level, I think we are going to conclude some dudes are going to have to like be played, and we're maybe going to have to recoup some values, mostly with Christian. I don't know. Zeke is getting too late, and
you don't have to recoup value if you just keep sinking assets into dumping bad salary. Which again, we're going to get to after we talk about the next trade that we've got.
That's always the backup plan. Yeah.
Let's go to the Clippers trade here. This one was from Mile High Z on X. This one was a little bit more. It was a little. It's interesting. It seems like there's no way that Denver could pull something like this off. But just hear us out here. In this trade, the Nuggets send out Christian Braun, Cam Johnson. They sent Christian to the Clippers along with their 2026 first overall pick, their first round pick. Cam goes to the Golden State Warriors. The Clippers send the Warriors Kawhi Leonard in exchange for Jimmy Butler's expiring contract and Moses Moody's contract that has 2 years left. Golden State sends them 2 first round picks, 2026 and 2028. So basically one each for like the 2, like what they would maybe deem as bad contracts in this case. Although like Jimmy isn't expiring. He's not going to play next season in all likelihood because of the timing of his injury. Moody, was it an ACL for Moody?
Can't remember.
Do you remember? His was even later. Yeah. Oh no, he did not. Left patellar tendon tear, so he might actually play. And he's young, so I actually think that like maybe the Warriors are getting a little bit fleeced here, and I don't see Golden State actually doing this because they don't trade their picks, but they're obviously getting Kawhi Leonard in return in this deal. One of these picks, by the way, for Golden State, the 2028 pick would be top 4 protected, which is like, okay, like I could see that being a little bit more enticing for the Warriors if they know, like, okay, if we truly suck one year, although like it doesn't matter now with the new lottery rules, so I would maybe change the protections on that. And right, from this deal where the Clippers are sending out Kawhi and like trying to clear money to take on Jimmy's contract and Moses Moody, the Clippers would send out Bogdan Bogdanovich's expiring, Derek Jones Jr.'s expiring, and Chris Dunn's expiring contract to Denver. I kind of am like, this is kind of not a best case scenario, but like pretty close to a best case scenario for Denver, given their priorities, given their priorities of trying to get off money. Because Derek Jones Jr., super helpful, athletic forward. Chris Dunn, obviously going to be a bench player. Like, none of these guys are in contention for a starting spot. So that would be my question is like, okay, fine. You elevate Peyton to a starter, but then who becomes your next starter? Your fifth starter in this instance. And it's like, okay, is this Derek Jones Jr.? Maybe
Yeah, you
it's
might
like a
have to do
rotating
something
starter type
else.
of situation. Maybe they would do something else in that case. They are saving about
But
$12 million
maybe Derek Jones
overall on this
Jr.
deal. He's also not consistently healthy, so I wouldn't necessarily want to make him like the permanent guy that you're like relying on to be the starter, because you can't really even expect him to have a fully healthy season. I don't see the Clippers doing this for a couple of reasons. The pick equity is nice, but the Clippers are just in a position right now where there's no incentive for them to tank whatsoever.
And tanking has been,
even to the point that tanking only means like
fixed.
being in the bottom half of the league, like trying to make the lottery. Even if you weren't like hardcore tanking, like just like we're a bad team, so we're like a mid team at best, so we're gonna make sure we're in that bottom half so that we can get in the lottery period, right? They're gonna try to be competitive, and obviously taking on a basically a $57 million contract for Jimmy Butler, who has an ACL tear and probably isn't going to play next year, does not make the team competitive. Moody, I think, probably already had his surgery and has begun rehab. I wouldn't be surprised if he was just like in uniform on opening night, like ready to go. But the Clippers get worse in this deal, and I don't think that they're trying to get
so much
worse. This would have to be a situation. This would have like, so it's that plus the combination of that plus the Golden State doesn't trade their first round picks. I think the last time they traded a first round pick was for Andrew Wiggins. I think that's literally the last time Golden State traded a first round pick.
Yeah, which is funny because they were trying to do the two timeline thing and maybe valuing the first round picks too much, but
I mean,
Steph's
they
not gonna
value them, like they're not moving them.
Yeah. It's like, what are you gonna do for Steph? Kawhi with Steph.
I mean, Steph keeps signing extensions, and now he's got his like $400 million shoe deal. So like, how much does like? I don't think Steph wants to leave the Bay Area as much as like Steph fans want him to.
He's going.
I think he's kind of like, I'd like us to be competitive, but like, I'm just here. It's kind of like Jokic, honestly, where it's like, look, man, if you don't apply pressure to this front office, they're not going to, respect you enough to like put like the chips in. But they're like, I just don't want to cause a fuss. And that's just how I am. So I'm not going to. Yeah. So this season, I think the Clippers, they have their pick. They got the 5th overall. They have their pick in 2028. But next year, they don't own their pick. They have a swap with OKC, which is probably going to be the worst pick in the league. So they don't have any incentive to get worse, besides obviously accumulating more draft capital, the promise of a Jimmy Butler expiring contract. I mean, Kawhi's contract is expiring too. So if they wanted to move on from the Kawhi experiment, if all you're getting for it is like some kind of nothing pick from the Warriors, and although it might not be nothing, like they're in the lottery this year, right? And then it's another expiring contract. Like you could have had that anyway. And I hear they really like Kawhi over there, like organizationally. They actually are.
The Clippers?
Yeah.
Yeah, no shit. They like him. They're giving him money under the table, doing whatever he wants.
So, yeah, I don't think that this would happen for that reason. But I don't hate the impulse, right? Is like, can we kind of get in on some of these other deals that other teams are making and kind of sneak somebody in there? I think it'd be easier to sneak in Zeke than Christian at this point, because there's like, whoa, where'd this 5-year contract come from? When they're like going to call in the trade to the league office, they're like, Christian Braun, what is he doing there? And Denver is just like,
Yeah, but in 3 more years, he'll only have 2 years left, and then you can trade him.
Yeah. That Canadian says, yeah, I wish I got paid to do nothing. Honestly, same. I wish I got paid to do something.
Yeah. That's why you shouldn't feel too bad for, Zeke. And he's been a good teammate on the Nuggets, but getting paid to just chill, whereas he probably would be out of the league by now, sadly.
Okay. So here's my my kind of brief rant on this, because I do want to get to NBA Finals talk. I actually didn't think this segment would take this long, but we always go a little bit longer on the yield contract stuff. So like I said earlier, the 2026 first round pick is not going to be enough to move Christian's contract. But how much would it take? We don't know, because teams generally just sit on that money, or if it's that toxic when we get to the case of Bradley Beals or Damian Lillard, who had shorter deals than Christian's, although they were twice as big in average annual value, more in the $50 million range than the $25 million range. Teams just wave and stretch. They're like, no, we're not going to give up draft capital. We'd rather just wave and stretch this money and just have like pieces of it on the books for years to come than give up the amount of draft capital that it would take to move this magnitude of bad money. And like I said, it's difficult to justify spending draft capital, especially substantial draft capital, like more than like 1.5 picks. And, half could be like a swap. It could be like a kind of protected situation, or like one that is going to be bad. In the case of like Denver's 2026 first, that's kind of what it is. It's like a half a first round pick, because they were the 4 seed in the West, and I actually think, we ended up 5th overall in the the fifth overall in the standings league wide. So that's why you end up at 26. So what can Denver do? Like I said, they could take back bad money, something like a Patrick Williams deal, or trying to find other players or contracts that another team might be undervaluing. Like who's the other team's Christian Braun that we feel a little bit better about, that we could be like, look, can we make a deal? And it won't necessarily be the size of Christian Braun's contract. That's the thing. And that's the other, not just the length, but the average annual value. Once you get to guys that are making that much money, it's not just the length of the contract that makes it difficult to move. It's like, well, you paid this guy this much money. How bad could he be that you're trying to move him? Kind of thing. Right. Because you would also expect players making above a certain amount to have a certain floor. Christian fell well below that floor this past season. We do expect him to bounce back next year, though, in some capacity, even if it's not quite to the degree that RX Smart says Reese. Little different with Reese because he's still on his rookie scale deal, but he is due to get paid in a couple of years. Let me look at the Hawks here. So Zachary Reese, $13.8 million he's making next season, and then he's got a team option for 27-28. That might not be a bad deal. I just don't think that I think the Hawks are probably more interested in someone with Reese archetype for their team build than they are with Christian's archetype, because they have too many players that are already like Christian, that are like Christian but better, in Dyson Daniels and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. So that would be something that I consider, but think along those lines, right? What is another are there any like reclamation projects that the Nuggets fans think would be a good bet for Denver while they're on this endeavor to get off of Christian's money? One of my favorite examples of this in recent times, obviously that a different team did, because Denver just hasn't done this like since I've been following the team. It's very strange, actually, how little they've engaged in trades for players that are like, well, trades like period, but trades for players that kind of fall into this mold. But I really like what the Pacers did with Aaron Nesmith to kind of rehab his career after a really rocky stint with the Boston Celtics. come back in a new system, be like, you're going to be our off ball shooting wing. Just give us what you can on defense and, whatever. And then his contract did not look good until he went to the Pacers and it looked amazing. And for some reason, he signed an extension that more so reflected, his previous reputation, frankly, than what he's had with the Pacers. They're definitely a front office that I like to study their moves a lot. And that would be the kind of thing that Denver, I think, should look to do. Whether the guy is on his rookie scale contract in the case of Risache, or what the Wolves frankly did with Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and maybe like a good player that doesn't get noticed as much because they're on a bad team, right? In the case of Nickeil, he was on the Pelicans before he got traded to the Wolves. So that would be those are kind of Denver's options if they wanted to try to get creative, if they were that desperate to get off of Christian's contract. But it's not going anywhere in all likelihood, given the factors that I discussed. Okay, last thing I wanted to touch on here. Ray Vaughn in the chat definitely touched on this earlier. Denver is in a bad money draft spiral. And it's belied by this irrationality that they have in their front offices, how they carry out their policy relative to what their roster building approach is. Now, Will, would you agree with me? We talked about this last year too. I'm just basically going to reiterate these arguments because they're coming back up again, given Denver's predicament. Would you agree that Denver's overall roster building philosophy is heavily reliant on building through the draft and bringing players up through their system?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, we know that
because
we tried to do that.
There are certainly counterexamples to this when it comes to having substantial elements of your team that came in either through free agency or trades, more so through trade. Aaron Gordon being the prime example of that. Previous to that, it was KCP via trade. Obviously, they do sign free agents on like smaller deals, but they're not really trying to bring in a free agent that is going to be like a substantial rotation piece through free agency.
Plus, free agency has been kind of dead, and then you'd have to make big trades, which the Nuggets haven't done since, Aaron Gordon, we just said. So
I like Ray's framing here better. Denver's negative asset factory. Obviously, the kind of prime examples of using draft capital to get off of bad money in the most negative ways, I would say, were last year when they used the 2032 first round pick to get off of MPJ's money, bringing in Cam Johnson. In their view, they thought they were bringing in a better player, a player that fit their system better in either direction. I don't think that the gap between the two players was big enough that if the quality of the players was, that much more similar, they shouldn't have had to give up the quality of draft capital that they did. It's not just like they gave up like the 2026 first round pick. They gave up their 2032 first round pick. And for their trouble, they didn't even include one of the most toxic is not the right word, but just like inert contracts on the roster that like you can't move. I don't think you can use inert for something that has a lot of inertia as Zeke's contract does. I think those mean different things. But they didn't even include Zeke in that deal, right? So I don't know what the sentiment was at the time that MPJ got his extension, whether there was thoughts that like that shouldn't have been a no-brainer max or not. From what I hear about the player that MPJ was when he was on the court before his last back surgery, it made sense to max him at that time because the upside was just too good and it was only a 25% max. But that's what it was, and they had to deal with it, and they decided to deal with it by moving his money with like would have been 1 year left on his deal if they'd kept him like one more year. with a valuable piece of draft capital. One of the things that you lose when you do it this way, by the way, when you use draft capital to get off of bad money, is you lose another draft pick that you could have used in your sort of prime roster building approach, which is your primary roster building approach, which is going through the draft, finding players that fit your system, and so on and so forth. Now, obviously, not every team is going to have like one thing that they do. And obviously, Denver doesn't only build through the draft, but they do so substantially that the way that they've been throwing away draft picks, both first and second rounders, and Calvin was as guilty of this as anybody, if not more so, that it sort of was like, I don't understand your over reliance of the draft, as in not being willing to trade some of your players at like peak or near peak value to get other players that fit your system better, if what you're going to do is also spend draft capital to get off of bad money. Next example of this, Zeke Naji, 4 years, including a player option on that extension for a player that the coaches had no trust in before that extension was given, a player who had barely seen the floor in his 3 years before that extension was signed, and who has barely seen the floor since that extension was signed. Not quite. I actually think that Zeke has seen the floor more in the last, is it 3 years now? 24, 25. Yeah, 3 years than he had in the first 3 years just because of injuries. But not enough for a player that is, again, when you're talking about a contract that is over 3 years long, 4 or 5, that is a contract for a player you want to keep, not for a player you want to trade. And I think the fact that revelations came out after the fact that the primary goal in crafting Zeke's contract was to create something tradable was shocking to me, frankly, because I remember being a brand new Nuggets fan that summer of 2023 after the title and talking about Zeke Naji's contract extension online. And I didn't have any of the like prior Zeke baggage or anything like this. And I wasn't even that into the CBA at this point, by the way. I was just like, okay, we drafted some guys. We got Julian Strawther, we got Hunter Tyson, Jalen Pickett, whatever. Went through free agency, whatever. And now they're extending Zeke. Seems like a long deal. It seems like the kind of deal that you give to a player that you're trying to keep. That was just my initial, just like gut reaction. And that has obviously played out multiple times over in the way that that contracts have been crafted and moved around the league and not moved around the league over the last few years, to the point when I found out that like, no, this wasn't like a play to keep Zeke forever. Like we were trying to create a tradable contract, and instead they created a mini albatross. We used to call it an albatross before they created a bigger albatross later in Christian's 5-year deal, right? And that contract I thought was going to get moved with like a substantial, like unprotected swaps or something like that. In the case of in the case of Zeke, but they just haven't been able to move it. Probably because what other teams are asking for in exchange is like, we are not willing to give that up. So you can only imagine what those conversations are like. But again, draft a player, doesn't actually develop well in your system. So like that part of the plan didn't work. Then you extend that player and create a negative asset on your roster on your books that becomes a more negative asset under the CBA that, I mean, the CBA had already gone through by the time they gave him this extension. It wasn't news. Some of the new changes that were coming down the pike that would have made it even more difficult to move longer contracts, but here we are. We already talked about Christian Braun as an example of this. The next set of examples we have are Reggie, Dario, and Russ, all getting player options in free agency. This for an organization that has for the last 3 years been like preaching the gospel of flexibility and then handing out contracts to players that you don't expect to be substantial parts of your organization, right? When you're giving out a vet minimum contract to a free agent that is like, in the most ungenerous terms, a ring chaser, in the most generous terms, a maybe helpful journeyman locker room vet, right? And then you give them a player option. You end up Reggie was on a MLE, so maybe a little bit different, but still. And then having to spend draft capital to get off of those deals. They got lucky with Dario because the Kings are stupid, frankly, right? And you need to take advantage of those opportunities too, that's one of those things that was encouraging about last summer. Feel how you want to feel about Valanciunas. It was way more helpful to have him on the roster than it was to have Dario. Dario did not play. Val helped us to get to a point where the non-Jokic minutes were the least bad they've been in years, right? So they got lucky and were able to move Dario's contract for Jonas because the Kings are dumb and they needed to shed salary, right? And Russ got a player option too, and maybe they shouldn't have. Maybe they would have been better off if they couldn't wiggle out of that one. But they were successfully able to get a player who had a player option to reject his player option. A player that they did not want here to reject his player option. They were not able to do that in the past with other guys, right? But going back to the draft capital point, I have to say, it hasn't always necessarily been as bad as the deals that we're talking about, either the contracts that were given or the way that they went about dumping a pick. JaMychal Green was a contract that they wanted to salary dump to get under the luxury tax in 2023. They traded JaMychal Green, they did this in 2022. They traded JaMychal Green and a pick to OKC of all teams. Great job, doing business with division rivals for the pick that became Peyton Watson. And it's another reason, looking at the future draft capital that was invested in Peyton Watson makes it really hard for me to believe that he's not going to be on the team next year. They're going to do what it takes to keep him. Even though I think that they're going about it in the complete wrong way by leaking that they're trying to create financial flexibility to match offers or whatever, instead of just being like, we're not just because if you want to save money, you should just do that behind the scenes anyway, whatever. But you should be projecting that you're going to match any offer because it will discourage other offers. That's negotiation 101 when it comes to restricted free agency. So that wasn't necessarily a completely bad use of a future pick because I think that one was the 2027. I'm actually going to check because they traded one of these picks for the pick that became Julian and another one for the pick that became Peyton. And that was
the one we did right after we won the finals. Was that one?
Yes. No. The Peyton one was the year before.
Oh yeah, because he was already on the team.
Okay, so that was the 2027 first round pick. That's gonna be next year. Whatever. I don't care about that pick. It's close enough to the future. To trade into a draft and get a player that had some upside. And until last year, that deal was looking pretty shaky in itself. But they had there was a vision with it. It wasn't just get off JaMychal Green salary like it was with Cam. I actually think it would have been really nice if we were able to get something back from Brooklyn. If it was just second round picks that we could have used in something just to kind of compensate for the fact that the first round pick that we were giving up was so valuable at the time. But yeah, I didn't love that deal. It wasn't the worst one, especially given what their directive clearly was: get us close to the luxury tax line so we could get under it at the deadline. And so in order to do that, they had to move out PJ. But I don't love the way they went about it. And if you're going to dump money, my two things, I'm going to be very clear about this. I'm not anti the MPJ trade. I think that either Zeke should have also been included, because I think that 2032 is that valuable that absolutely you should have been able to include 3 more years of Zeke's like whatever money to a team that doesn't care if they're winning anyway. Or get back some kind of like, can you give us like a couple second round picks back or something that we could use to either like replenish our just second round, pick stock, and maybe use those to get off of Zeke's money eventually, or use in another trade. Because currently Denver's just out of everything tradable. And of course, the last most recent example of this was Monte Morris and Will Barton getting salary dumped to the Washington Wizards. But they also included, it was a salary dump, but they included the pick. Can I finish? They included a first round pick to move off of their money and then upgrade Denver's shooting guard defensively position by bringing on KCP. And the reason I can call it a salary dump now is because it's not like they don't have KCP 3 years later. They extended him for 2 more years after that, and that was it. But he's not on the team anymore, so it was a salary dump. Which is what we'll be saying about this if they end up just trading Cam for nothing, by the way, is that the MPJ thing was a salary dump. Right? Because it was.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I think people carry the connotation of salary dump where it's like, you don't want anything back for it at all. It's like, yes, the mechanism was that you salary dumped because you cut salary. But I think like a lot of times fans think of it as like, you just didn't give a shit what you got back. You just sent it out. And obviously the Nuggets got a better return for Monte and Barton. MPJ, debatable with Cam. Obviously, they put way too much reliance on the first round pick in betting that trade was going to be really good for the Nuggets, and they didn't value MPJ highly enough in that trade, which was like really being adamant, like you're saying, to include someone else and or not including the pick. It's not like we had to be that desperate to trade MPJ as a player, but maybe they were too hasty to be desperate because of the money to get under the luxury tax.
Yeah. And that deal could have happened at any point in the summer, to be clear, too.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think Brooklyn still is like well under their salary. Like it could have happened right now. Not literally right now, but like it could have happened later in the summer. If they hadn't been as desperate. To be fair though, they wouldn't have been able to get Val. That's the main one, is like they were able to get Valanciunas because the Kings were desperate, and we were in a place where we had
finally
financial flexibility, and we're able to leverage that to bring on a useful player and get off of Dario's money. I wanted to see here KCP. I just want to see traded to Washington. I just wanted to see how much Monte and Will were making when they got traded, because I'm curious. First, I wanted to see the quality of draft capital that went into that salary dump versus so in this case, Denver sent out,
I mean, they combined were around 14 million. I don't know how much Barton was.
Oh, hang on. Traded to Denver. SpotTrack says they did not include a first round pick in that one. It was just Monte and Will for KCP.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I don't remember us trading a pick. Yeah.
Okay. But I guess we can strike that one from the record. That was just a good trade. It was also a salary dump still, but it was not one that involved, stripping yourself of your remaining positive assets. Yeah. Find more dumb teams, please.
I know. Is there just a desperate team? I mean, people are struggling to retool and rebuild and shift gears. Can we leverage something? That's what it's like. Yeah, the CB trades don't look likely, but what can the Nuggets pull off? And even if CB trades aren't possible, whether it's a Jamal trade or an Aaron Gordon trade or whatever it is they decide to do, and I know people have been talking about maybe even making a mid-season trade. Like, could you make Christian Braun look a little bit better until the mid-season and then try something? But again, mid-season trades rarely push teams to actually win the title the year that they make those trades. So I'd rather make a trade in the summer, but you're kind of limited right now.
I mean, we thought that was going to happen with OKC because of Jared McCain. I mean, it did happen with Caruso, though. They got Caruso that year.
Yeah, but I think...
Oh, that wasn't mid-season. No. They got that. The Josh Giddey trade happened at the beginning of the offseason. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So close.
Was Hartenstein mid-season?
Was who?
Hartenstein?
No, they signed him in free agency.
Oh, okay.
They do that. They had all that cap space because all their players are 2 years old. That's patronizing. They're not 2 years old. They're 22 years old. We had a comment from RX Smart who says the Nuggets, when healthy, are more talented than the Knicks. I'm curious to hear from Grace. I don't think that's not true. The bench is a little bit less talented, but I feel like the starters are more talented. If you're just looking at like raw talent, I think like a healthy AG just like makes Denver look a lot better than when an AG is either not healthy or not available, obviously. Actually, on that point, before we move on to our next segment, because we do need to talk about these crazy NBA finals. I've seen a lot more momentum online for the discourse or the debate being less about like which trades to do to either move off of salary or whatever, than to just run it back like in full, like, or run it back with just Cam gone. But I feel like I've seen a lot more people saying just pay everybody the hell with the repeater tax, and go through it. And I wanted to know your thoughts on that possibility.
On what, like,
kind of run it back, like literally bring everybody back. Probably like Val would be gone, but bring everybody back and hope for better health.
Yeah, I know. It's always the debate. It's kind of what we've been talking about with this idea of even just trading CB. Is sounds great because you're getting off of this huge contract, but what you kind of giving up and selling so low, you could be taking on other worse problems.
I don't even think that the debate with Christian is about like, do we want to give up this much? It's like, would another team even take this much to take on the contracts?
Yeah, that's ultimately what it is. But just the idea of, even with Murray and AG selling them, well, I think you could make an argument that you're selling high on Murray, but you're selling very low on AG. But the Nuggets could think that AG is just never going to be healthy and therefore would be willing to just kind of do that anyway. And again, with all these trades, I really am skeptical with the possibility that they will go through. So, I mean, you can't help but think about the possibility of running it back and hoping for better health. And it goes back to people asking about, are the Nuggets more talented than the Knicks? And CT asked earlier, do the Nuggets have to revamp our personnel? I saw him tweet about how he thought the Knicks and the Spurs in last night's finals just looked so much more capable than the Nuggets. I forget the exact words that he used, but just that they looked more like modern and it had more weapons. Offense was more versatile. People were just playing their roles really well, I think, on the Knicks. And the Spurs are obviously super young, so of course they're different than the Nuggets. And they have, like, their dudes are all super high drafted players. But I do think that, like, the Nuggets do need to adjust to actually meet the requirements of what the NBA is now. I just am skeptical of like we've been talking about, getting guys who can play some defense, getting a little bit bigger, getting more physical, some physical guys.
Bigger. Ugh. Denver's plenty big. They just don't play like it. Like, Denver is not one of the smallest teams in the league. They're one of the biggest teams in the league. by roster
Yeah,
size, by
true, true,
even
true.
if you weighted it by minutes. So I don't want to hear about Denver having to get bigger. Like, sure, why not? But the
I
problem
mean,
is how they play.
width wise,
You think they need to get
stronger.
thicker? I don't think that we're one of the. I think Jokic brings up the average
He
width
brings it,
enough.
but he can't play like a guy. Well, in the post he can, but not
I
on
mean, where
defense.
else do you play like that?
On defense, and he can't because he's too slow.
Sure. I don't know. I don't think Denver's a skinny team either. I think Peyton Watson just kind of like skews that for
Peyton
you.
and Cam skinny. Jamal is biggish for a guard, but he plays like he's small.
I
Like he
don't know.
doesn't
I
use
don't
his
think that you
physicality
see
enough.
how like actual like guards play pretty small. I don't think Jamal plays small for a guard, even on defense.
But he
If
doesn't
anything, he
ever
plays a little
use
bit
his
too
size.
big. Like I think he needs to be a little bit more vigilant and use like his foot speed a little bit more than he does.
That's true.
Um
He was doing he was using his foot speed all the way through the season, but then just dropped it
no, he
down by
wasn't. He
physicality.
stopped in January. Um
Mm.
I meant
Well,
defensively.
he got
Defense.
exhausted.
The
Uh,
reason I would say I'm leaning more towards this option, it's not about what the roster needs. It's about my level of trust, I guess, in the
yeah.
Cronkies and KSE to actually like we talked so much about the ability to leverage all this flexibility that they've been preaching about for the last few years. And I simply don't trust them to actually use that in a meaningful way.
Mm.
I don't necessarily agree with that, Ray. I think your size can matter, like not regardless of your speed. Obviously, I think that I wouldn't. That's not how I would characterize it. I think that Jamal is slow, but I don't think he's too slow for his size to matter. What was I saying?
Just that you don't
Flexibility. I don't
trust.
trust them
Yeah.
to use their flexibility to actually make the team better. And the reason I don't is that the reason I don't trust them is that they haven't given me a reason to. Um, everything every major roster change would be primarily driven by wanting to save money. So I would rather them just have all the talent possible on the team and try to figure it out with them than to cut
Mm.
corners in the name of like maybe one day being able to retool things. By the way, without any, draft assets, unless you're planning on taking like a massive gap year and taking back more. Like if you were trading Jamal or AG, what you would take back is way less salary and like only draft assets. Um, and that would be I don't like the idea. I don't like the idea of a leap year for Jokic. Like he's gonna be 31 next season. Or is he 31
Oh yeah,
now?
I don't like.
I just don't like it. I mean, I think that we're taking for granted how much longer Jokic is going to be operating at the level he operates
No,
at,
you
or like
can't
the kind
take.
of. I'm not saying that Jokic is going to see like some dramatic decline. What I will say is, especially for somebody in that like he's in kind of a critical age range, especially for a big man in the league, that once you start to see like the declines on the margins, it starts to have a compounding impact on, or a compounding effect on like the on court impact. And I would rather take advantage of him while he's good and
Mm-hmm.
not be like, well, we think he'll still be like 80% of what he is in like 2 or 3 years. I'm like, I don't know that 80% of what he is going to be enough because of the position that he plays. Right. So I would rather try to maximize the window that they're in. And I don't trust them to do that if what they're primarily concerned with right now is saving money.
Mm-hmm. And whether it's the Cronkies making the ultimate decisions or the new GMs or old GMs, they
I mean,
haven't made
Josh
the right
Kroenke got those
decisions.
executive of the year votes. I didn't see any for Ben Wallace.
Well, apparently, yeah. I think we talked about how it was a joke by. Did we discover who the votes were from? I can't remember, but he said it
We
was a
didn't
friend.
discover who it from. He said it was a friend. I mean, there were two. He said it was one friend, but there were two votes he got.
Yeah.
And where does the joke originate from, Will? There's a grain of truth there. The dude was sitting there presiding over this like conglomerate exit interview, like the other guys needed to be chaperoned or something.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
Richard Jefferson is who we like guessed who it was
yeah,
because he was a Nugget at one point.
rumored.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we were talking earlier too about like players putting pressure on the front office, like Jokic saying what he would want or need. It is a lot of pressure though. At the same time, like I don't trust the front office either, based on what we've seen. They'd have to like show me
It's
something
not the
to
front
then
office
see
I
how
don't
it turns
trust. It's
out.
the organization because
Yeah,
they're
that too.
primarily concerned with saving money. Like the front
Yeah,
office could be doing their damnedest to be like, let's try to get the best possible return here, but they're still constrained by they want us to get close to the luxury tax line,
yeah.
right?
So that too, and then it is a lot of pressure for even Jokic to be like, you know what? I think I would need to maximize my window is X, Y, and Z. And you got to be really certain about that. And like maybe Jokic does have a clear idea of what he wants.
I don't care about that. I don't think players
Yes,
should be GMs. Like,
exactly.
it's not that I don't
That's what I'm
care, but it's
saying.
kind of like, all right, like,
It's like I think their input in like should be considered somewhat. You don't want to make your star upset, but you don't want to go word for word what they want because it's like
Christian Braun's his
they
favorite
might not be
player.
right. They might not be correct all the time. This happens a lot with huge stars in the league.
One
And
of
I'm
his
not
favorite.
saying I don't trust Jokic. I know he's very smart and knows how he wants to play and
I
what
don't
kind of
trust Jokic.
players. That's fair. I just think
He got
I think
Christian that
Jokic is
contract.
super smart.
Why would I trust him?
Well, he was part of it, but he didn't. I don't think he decided the final
I
number
know.
there.
I'm just saying, it's like, all right, like, we get it.
Yeah. So yeah, but I'm just saying, like you said, it's a good point. I don't trust the front office. Someone's gonna have to make a decision, and I hope it is the right decision for the Nuggets to actually be competitive and isn't just to get under the luxury tax and take
Uh,
a gap year.
the last thing that I will say about this, and you can bring up Ray's second to last comment about Jamal. The Jamal isn't athletic enough. Talking about Jamal as a defensive liability. I think that Jamal would be like a standard defensive liability on like most teams in the league that like have real rim protection, but Denver doesn't. And I think this is the best case to be making for it's just time to break up Jokic and Murray, which is fine. Like I'm totally okay with that case being made. You might even be right. But I also think that what they would do is just try to save money and not try to bring in maybe you're not looking to bring in equivalent talent because you're like, well, we're going to make Peyton Watson our second option and, make Jokic pull what's remaining of his hair out. And, we'll just kind of have to deal with that on the back end. Uh, and what you would do is just try to bolster your depth, which, by the way, still pushes guys like Duran and Julian to the periphery. And that's just like the nature of having a deep team is like some guys play and some guys don't play, like, because they don't have to play. Because they don't have to be good. Right now, those guys like kind of have to be good. And I think that Julian kind of acquitted himself well. You have to be both good and trusted. Like you have to be a guy that the coaches are willing to play in order to be useful, because otherwise you just push all the minutes burden to everybody else up the roster, by the way. But that's the best case. I think that's the best case to make for the Jamal move has to be made now because there's no kind of hope for like an upside with this partnership anymore. It's like this is where these two guys are at defensively. They just can't work together anymore. And you're obviously not trading Jokic, so Jamal is just the one that is the one to be moved. But again, I don't trust them to get something good back, whether it's the draft capital, frankly, or the players. And probably a Jamal package would have to include both good players and draft capital. Because I don't think that they would look to get back. You're not going to get back an equivalent player. And the kinds of players that other teams would be willing to give up for Jamal are obviously worse than him. So they need to make up for it by including draft capital too. That's my general thought of it. Franz Wagner or bust, man. Like
they're gonna have to show that they can be a little bit more ruthless too in these deals, like we said with the MPJ, including that.
They're just terrible negotiators, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, the last time, the KCP trade, now I'm looking at it, there wasn't a pick. I'm like, Will Barton and Monte Morris for KCP is a great deal. It's like, yeah, we found some suckers in Washington to take on more money and give us a better player that like better fit our system at that point, right? Obviously, Will Barton had come off of like a pretty good season that ended poorly because of just the burden on him, and then what happened to what was it with him, like a series of hamstrings or something down the stretch of that season, or
Who are you asking?
22 Will Barton.
Oh yeah, I had some hamstring stuff. Or
But
it
they were
was
like,
like
oh, let's sell high immediately, and maybe the Wizards think they can rehab his value, but then they obviously
it was
didn't.
that, or it was some like core body issue, core injury. Can't remember, but yeah, something like that.
Oh, okay. So Ray, I wanna comment on this one because I was kind of jokingly speculating on this. Ray said that the fact that Josh looked us in the eye and said there was some other guy on that stage who negotiated the Mike trade does scare me. We speculated that it was the Mike trade they were talking about because they talked about like one of the like assistant GMs or something else, someone else in the front office that played point on a significant trade last summer. It is very possible and probably like it's likely that it wasn't the Mike trade they were talking about. It was the Valanciunas trade. And we do know that there were a lot more sort of behind the scenes, like not the main guys negotiations happening with that deal because of how it came together. It was kind of the Kings that came to Denver and were like, are you still interested in this guy? So it sounds more like that was the one that they were talking about. Just to clarify on that point. Because we did speculate that like, why are they talking about not the two GMs that we have? I had a thought the other day about Ben and John and how how they didn't like Calvin was like very offended by whatever initial offer the Cronkies gave him on an extension, and maybe the Cronkies wanted him to be offended because they were going to fire him anyway. I don't actually necessarily think that's true. I think they just like to kind of shortchange people. But now we have two GMs. So two executive vice presidents of various aspects of the organization, basketball operations and player personnel. How much are they getting relative to other guys in their position to basically make less than they're probably making less than half of what was offered to Calvin? Because I don't think the Cronkies would have hired two guys otherwise, unless they could.
Yeah, yeah. They have to be.
I'm curious about that.
Because you're going to pay what, two guys equally what you'd pay one GM? I don't think so.
All right, let's move on to the NBA Finals.
Yay. Go Knicks. I am surprised, man. I'm not even going to get into it. I'm rooting for the Knicks, and everyone's going to have to get over it.
I think people are fine. I've seen a pretty even split on this finals. Like there's no like one that at least on NBA Twitter, to be very clear. With this deal, I follow a lot of people that are Spurs fans, probably just because like our team is in the West and we just interact with them more. So but yeah, the Knicks are like not they're not treated as like this like demon big market team as of right now. Maybe they will after like a summer of like their redemption tour, like where they kind of do what frankly Denver Nuggets fans did after their title, where they're like, woohoo, top of the world, like you can't say nothing to us, and burning everything down in their wake. I want to talk about this game because obviously it had some wild swings. Knicks went up very early, sitting next to my partner, and he's like, oh, the Spurs were up. It was like 13 to like 4 or something like that, or maybe like 12 to 2, something like that. Spurs came back, kind of took the lead, was a little bit more back and forth, I would say, but the Spurs were mostly maintaining a lead after like midway through the first quarter. Then the Spurs went on, was it a 20 to 3? Well, so the Spurs went on a 20 to 3 run to close the first quarter. And then they just kind of kept chipping away in that second quarter to take like a 7-point lead before half. I thought the Knicks really handled like the close to the half very poorly, because at one point with like 90 seconds left, it was a 2-point game. And then it turned into, it was like under a minute, I think. And then it turned into like a 7-point game. So it's like, okay, that's not as good, right? You want to close better than that. And I think there was a bad turnover. And then eventually the Spurs came out early in that third quarter and they were just hitting. Not threes, but everything else. And then they took a 14-point lead, right? They expanded their lead and it looked like, okay, time to deliver that knockout punch that we've seen the Spurs be able to do, even to a team like OKC, a team that's really hard to get a knockout punch on, right? It's usually a team you have to keep going back and forth with and like wrestle with until, you know, even if you have a big lead, like they're going to make you play until the, not necessarily the final buzzer if it's like a big point gap, but they keep things close enough that you like, okay, got to watch this game. But the Spurs were able to do that last round. They were not able to deliver a knockout punch against the Knicks. They started off the quarter pretty hot, but then they went ultimately 8 of 23 from the field in the third quarter, 34.7%. It's really bad. That included 0 of 8 from 3, right? And this made me wonder if this was just going to be a variance series, because the Spurs were absolutely hitting their 3-point shots in the first half, and that's what helped them take the lead, because the Knicks were not hitting all the shots. Like they weren't hitting every single shot anymore like they had throughout the rest of the playoffs. But I actually thought, looking back at it, like the Knicks defense in that third quarter just completely locked down. We have some great examples of that here. Let's get to the blocks, some of the like big highlight plays. So this one was Cat on Champagny and help defense. And I don't even think Champagny was going to make that shot, but Cat was like, nope. It's kind of a weird angle for a shot too when you look at it. De'Aaron Fox tries to run a guard-to-guard with Champagny, who drives on Jalen Brunson. He's really terrible at his recovery on hedges, and yet that is what the Knicks do with him. Though, to be fair, it's like, well, what else is he going to do in terms of coverages schematically? I don't think the Spurs, process-wise, were like fantastic in this game offensively, but it was pretty consistent with how they've played the rest of the playoffs, where it's like, okay, they're doing some of the right things. You're putting Jalen Brunson into every action. You're getting downhill. You're making every extra pass. You're generating high quality threes. But I think they're pretty jump shot reliant at this point. And when those threes dried up, obviously, like, they weren't making their middies either. I think they missed, I think in the fourth quarter, I think they missed every shot from outside the restricted area or outside like 6 feet or something. It was crazy.
I mean, Wendy hit a 3 in the fourth.
So maybe it was like they went like one, they made 1 or 2.
Yeah, I'm sure it was very low.
Yeah.
But I don't think they missed everything.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah. Go ahead and go to the deuce block next.
Real quick, just to your point, like on this last play,
yeah.
I think this is Harper wide open.
And you've got
corner.
Deuce on the floor because he's like tripped and he's open. But Champagny's a good connective passer, but I think that he was a little bit overwhelmed with like the crowd and the paint there, and was just like, I can probably get this shot off. And I thought he was going to get the shot off. I wasn't sure if he was going to make it. I definitely didn't think it was going to get blocked by Cat, to be honest. That's like a Wemby style block, which you can get away with when the guy that you're blocking is like, you've got over a foot on that guy, right? Or close to a foot, I guess. This Cat's like legit 7-footer. Champagny's not quite 6 foot. He's not short, but he's not like crazy tall. But when you're fading away that far back like he was for a tough shot, it kind of magnifies that height difference too.
Yeah, we can watch this next block by McBride.
Yeah, so this is Keldon Johnson in transition. I think the Spurs actually missed on this ATO as well. But that was good hustle. That was a big point of contention for the Knicks in the first half of this game. The Spurs had 14 fast break points in the first half. And honestly, I don't think the Spurs half court offense was very good in the first half of the game at all. They were just getting everything in transition. They're pretty relentless in how they were pushing pace. And the Knicks were not ready for it. In the second half, let me see where the Spurs ended up here. The
Knicks definitely picked the pace up.
Yeah, the fast break. Yeah, so the Spurs ended up with, they only got one more fast break point the entire game. Is probably free throws off of. That's really good. That's a really good turnaround. I think that was the main thing that the Knicks needed to clean up, to be honest, because the Spurs weren't really punishing New York with like really sharp half court offensive execution. And I want to go back to my point about how the Spurs have been sort of prosecuting this playoffs offensively. I don't like, a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, Miss Johnson, like the schemes, this, that, and the other. Call like better plays, blah, blah, blah. And I think some of it is on him, but I didn't hate any individual thing that the Spurs would go to. But and I think I talked about this on last show, with a team like OKC, a team like Denver, a team like the Knicks, it could look ugly. And it did look ugly for the Knicks, even down the stretch of this game where it's like Jalen Brunson ISO or Jalen Brunson pick and roll. Like, we know what we're going to get to. It might look ugly, but we know what we're doing as a team. Everybody knows what they're supposed to do in this instance. May not work. He may not make the shot. It may result in an open corner three that bricks or air balls or whatever, but everybody knows what they're trying to do on that possession. I think the Spurs do a lot of different things, but they don't excel at any one thing in the half court right now. And I think that has led to some, maybe like a combination of the players and the coaches not necessarily knowing, like, what are we supposed to spam here to at least guarantee that we get a decent look, or at least a decent chance at a decent look. And I think that gap between those two teams made itself very evident in the fourth quarter. So I think the third quarter was about the Knicks defense, cleaning up the transition and then just kind of locking down, especially just doing a better job at the point of attack. But the fourth quarter was really like, there's a gap here between the level of like self-familiarity with each team's offensive identity. I think the Spurs are still trying to find themselves. And this is something I've been saying throughout the playoffs. I thought it would get them in the Thunder series, but they were able to pull that one off. Thankfully, like all of us are, well, I don't know. At least I'm happy about that. Maybe not Will.
I am, but yeah. My happiness is short-lived. Yeah. I was happy for 1 second.
But they won that series with defense. Like, there was I thought that they would have to have like one more like solid offensive game, because I think they had probably game 4 was game 1 and game 4, because I think those were the two games where Wemby was most able to impose his will on the offensive end of the floor. And I don't mean impose your will, like he made shots in other games and obviously did in game 7 as well. Jump shots, especially, but he was not really able to impose himself as an interior scoring threat outside of games 1 and 4. What was the other one they won? Game 6. That wasn't really like a Wemby offensive game. That was everybody else. Like, everybody was making their shots, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Wemby is a great team around him.
So where was I going with that? But I thought that they were going to have another one of those games where it looks like, okay, this is their offensive identity. This is the thing that they're going to go to in order to win that series. And they didn't, because the defense was good enough. But in this game, Jalen Brunson being a motherfucker just like trumped everything else.
That's what's crazy, is like he's so small, and you'd think the athleticism and the youth of the Spurs guards and perimeter ball pressure and just running into defender after defender. Even if you get a switch or you get an action and you're running off of it, you run right into another defender. And then you got Wemby, and how do you clear him out? But some ways he was just able to sneak through and snake through and get little layups off these scoop shots. And he really didn't grift and flop as much as people would think when you think of Brunson in that game. It was only a couple times, but for the most part, he was like really looking for shots and then like getting downhill and driving. But I think you're really right about the execution of the, the Spurs are young, and I still like watching that game last night. I was almost still in shock that the Spurs made the finals over the Thunder, just because
It's that defense, man.
of
And
some of
even in
the
this game, like I'm watching the fourth quarter and I'm like, the Knicks could still lose this game just because the Spurs defense is that good. And it's because of Wemby, obviously.
yeah. I was
Like,
like, they're just gonna like tighten it down on that 8-0 run in the fourth. I was like, they're about to just like lock this down. The Knicks might not score
yeah,
and win
yeah.
this game, but it didn't hold up as much because I think, yeah, you're right. Like they don't know what lever to pull every single time, even on their individual levels. What do they go to, and the team level? What do they
I
go
think
to?
there's also an aspect of sometimes things don't work for a possession or two. And they might go away from things a little too quickly because of that, instead of kind of adjusting to make that thing work that might be like your best option. That's definitely going to be something that I watch more throughout this series, because I think I could be wrong, because the Spurs could obviously tighten up defensively even more. They have certainly held teams with great offenses, at least on paper, good offenses, let's say, to less points than the Knicks scored last night, and less points than they would have needed to win that game, than the Spurs would have needed to win that game. But I think if they're going to win this series, they're going to have to turn it back into, I mean, frankly, I thought the first half was a slugfest. If the Spurs hadn't been getting all the points that they got in transition, or even half of them, that would have looked like a slugfest half, where the Knicks, I think, they had less than 50 points, like 47, I think, going into the half, and the Spurs were at like what, 55, 54 points, something like that. And like a third of them were fast breaks, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And they're
Yeah.
going to need to push that even more. What I think is pretty impressive about this game offensively for the Knicks, and this is not like they were able to do it without this, so look out, Spurs, wait till this kind of comes uncorked, because it's a feature of their team, is the Knicks play very slow. So for the game, they only had 12 fast break points, despite forcing a lot of live ball turnovers in this game.
They did.
And that's in large so that's in part because the Knicks play a bit slower, but it might just be, I mean, it's that, and that the Spurs have this fantastic transition defense. It's how they were able to get through that series against the Thunder, despite throwing the ball all over the place, throwing live ball turnovers all series, and still being able to get back in time to where it was not an automatic bucket. And that is something that I have been lamenting about Denver over the last couple of months, of watching the playoffs and watching other teams just get back in transition. Whereas when Denver throws a live ball turnover, that is a free 2 points for the opponent. Nobody even tries to get back there. Wow. Josh Hart was a plus 22 last night. He led
Grabbed
the game.
So many rebounds.
15 rebounds is crazy. Yeah.
It was wild.
That needs to be what Christian Braun does.
Yeah, just because you're a starter, Christian, don't lose your edge on doing some dirty work and getting scrappy.
Yeah, Spurs had 13 turnovers, which doesn't sound like a lot, but this was a pretty
I think they had 5 in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, it was including the one that everybody's going to be talking about probably on the, I don't watch any of these shows anymore. But like first take and like first things first, that's probably going to be the Wemby clip that they play.
I would love it, but I feel like they're too embrace, they love Wemby too much. They're going to make him the star. But I don't know. I could be wrong. I don't know what those
for now.
might be. Yeah, for now.
I think if they lose the finals, that's when they start to turn, right?
Yeah.
I just wanted to see how many steals. 8 steals for the Knicks. So that's the live ball turnovers there. Oh my god, 4 for Josh Hart. Goodness, he was just all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Christian, you gotta at least be Josh Hart, man. Anyway, so let's talk about Jalen Brunson in the fourth quarter. He had a bad game. He did. It was not good. He was 12 of 31 on the night. And going into the fourth quarter, just doing a little bit of math here, that's 7 of 22 from the field. But he went 5 of 9 in the fourth quarter and scored New York's last 5 baskets.
Yeah, the big ones they needed.
Do
you want to look at some of those?
Yeah. But just while you're pulling that up, the Brunson show was getting to be a lot. I was like in that fourth quarter during that Spurs 8-0 run. I was like, can we run something for Cat? Can we do literally anything? Because you just need buckets here, right? Because the Spurs are gaining on you, right? But this goes to what I said about the Spurs, where it's like sometimes a thing doesn't work or you do it wrong and you just adjust and you try to do it better next time. Get a better angle, get a better set a better screen, make the shot. And that's what Jalen Brunson did. The team missed 8 shots in a row, including 4 that Jalen Brunson had taken. He was kind of interspersed. So it's not like he was the only one taking shots during that run, but he had missed half of the shots that they, missed in a row. But then like clockwork, that last 2 minutes hits and Jalen hit the 2 biggest shots of the game. If you could bring up the Brunson 3 first. This is of course, an offensive rebound. That was it Josh that had gotten that offensive rebound initially?
You mean like after Brunson hits it away?
Oh, he hit it away. I thought that was a missed shot. Okay. So Vassell hit it away.
But I do want to say this might have been a transition where like they went down and tried to score, didn't score, and then got the rebound off of it. But I'm not positive. But that just is interesting when you're talking about Spurs transition D. But anyway,
so Brunson the Spurs had taken the lead for the first time in that quarter because the Knicks had, stormed back in the third to tie the game up after being down 14, and then took the lead and were up, I think, not a comfortable margin, but the kind of margin where you're like, oh, this team is like probably going to win this game. It was like 8 points, I think, with like 5 minutes left. And I was like, there's plenty of time left. But if you're the Knicks right now, all you have to do is get stops. Like every other possession, get a stop, get a bucket. Doesn't have to be every possession, but just like keep that drip going and try to maintain like this margin or closer until there's like 2 minutes left. And then you'll feel a lot more comfortable with the 8-point margin. But obviously the Spurs went on this run. And so here we go. Jalen Brunson, relocation 3, no hesitation. Splash. And the Knicks didn't look back from there. The last shot he hit, this was the game sealing shot here. I think they were up. Yeah, so they're up 4, 45 seconds left. If you make a bucket here, the game's basically over. He was definitely trying to get a call there, but he made the basket. I did not think that was going to go in. I actually thought that, who's on him here, Vassell? I thought he might have gotten a piece of the ball. Because like this is a good contest.
I think it's just the angle. The angle makes it look like he might have, but yeah.
Well, I don't think he did now because I don't think that
but when you
the
saw
ball
it,
would have had that trajectory like perfect.
He hit the ball in the basket.
Yeah.
He fell over too, trying to get the call, but thankfully he made it, so people don't have to complain about it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can still if you just don't like that he did that at all, but like if he missed that, I mean, they were up 4, so they could have maybe still won, but like they were up 8 with 5 minutes left. Everyone was missing. They were taking just horrible shots. They were like fadeaway pull up off the dribbles with just like no foundation in the jump shots. Like I'm pretty sure. I can't remember who else took a really bad one. I think it was McBride took a bad one, and then Brunson took a lot of bad ones. And I just thought, oh, they're going to lose the game. But And then I was thinking, who's going to be the closer on the Spurs? Like you said, they're still trying to find their identity. Who's going to be the one that's going to lock this game down offensively and score? Is Wemby going to do it? I know Brunson is a really good closer and he can do it, but they were like slumping and he was missing stuff. And then closer Brunson showed up at the last second. So it was exciting to watch the end. Do we have anything else? Oh, well, okay. I was going to show some defensive Brunson. But is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, go ahead and hit some of these defensive clips. I'm excited to see them.
I like this one in the fourth because Brunson, it may look small, but I just like that he was just hitting Wemby on rolls. Like this actually was they don't show, but it was kind of like almost like a horns. Like Wemby set a screen right here and then rolled off of it. They don't show it at the beginning, but like Brunson just kind of hits him with his shoulder.
That's a good call there.
And he doesn't get downhill. He gets completely disrupted.
And it fully goes along with what we saw last series with how OKC was strongly prioritizing Wemby's role over anything else. But they were doing it in slightly different ways, a lot more aggressive on switches. But here they were like, nope, we got Brunson on Wemby, and like Wemby's like, well, I could just take Brunson. And probably what should have happened here, like Harper was maybe a little overzealous and should have recognized, like, okay, they're kind of like switching Brunson onto Wemby here. I could slow down a little bit, or but he's just full speed ahead. And that's like one of the things that is also good about Dylan Harper. Actually, he could have gone for the layup there, to be honest, but he was probably just like, I'm going too fast.
Could have. Yeah. And I think that's part of the inexperience, and it's the finals, and they're really good, but there are little things like this where they're just not quite comfortable making the right decision. Pass goes to the corner, wild pass, guy in the corner can't do anything with it but throw it back cross court for a turnover. And that was a big play. I mean, Spurs really needed to score in that possession. And then similarly, let's look at another one. Brunson just kind of taking Wemby on a roll and just hitting him.
Yeah.
And they just settle for a little jumper on the corner castle jumper, which isn't the worst thing in the world, maybe. But,
I highly suspect the Spurs are going to be a lot more aggressive in recognizing and attacking this coverage in game 2 tomorrow. And just being way more aware of, like, they're going to put a small on Wemby. We have to be a lot more, we just have to get him the ball.
Yeah. And Wemby's got to work to get the ball there, because he kind of just stops and then the Spurs just take the shot. And there's a lot of things the Spurs can do. I mean, the Knicks started out really slow as well. But I'm interested to see how the Spurs adjust, and then it'll be up to the Knicks, I think. But then also, like, we'll talk about Cat. Like, Cat, just all he had to do was kind of just plant his feet in the post and not let Wemby just push his way in, which makes sense because Cat is like a thicker body. He can just stand there, and Wemby's not going to be able to push over him. He's going to have to either dribble around him or do like a spin move or something like that. So let's look at that. Pull it up. This was in the fourth as well. Knicks up 3. Get a little driving kick to Wemby near the like midway between the lane at the 3, and then just kind of gets stonewalled by Cat and tries to do like a little turnaround hook shot. That's a really tough shot.
I really hated that shot in the moment as well.
Yeah. But like Cat just doesn't even move.
Cat just kind of does. And Cat did a great job last night. I really think the only thing was like he had a couple dumb fouls, but other than that, I thought he did a pretty good job of exactly what you're supposed to do when he basically played like a big forward against Wemby, right? You don't need to have like incredible foot speed, by the way, because like although Wemby has like this insane like footstep because of his stride length, he's not gonna like get around you that easily. And Cat's got pretty good foot speed for his size. And so he's able to like stay in front of him. I actually thought Cat did a better job on Wemby than Mitchell Robinson did. to be
Oh
honest.
yeah, of course. Yeah, but when
Um,
Robinson had some moments, but Cat was just more impactful and was in it more. I think, just more time playing on him. It was also
yeah, I
funny.
thought Mitchell just made a lot of mistakes and
Yeah.
was like kind of generally lost,
Mm.
which is like what you would normally say about Cat. So I wanted to acknowledge that.
True, but then Cat was also big on the glass, and I think a lot of it was some interesting moments where, I'm not going to show any of Cat on offense. People have been talking about how he was driving in on Wemby, and Wemby was up way too far on him, like in a half court setting where it's like he's almost at the logo, and he's playing him like he's in the post. He's like really up close on him, and Cat just drove right around him. But also just like down low, getting rebounds, like Cat just out battled him at times, which is just you can't do if you're Wemby. I mean, you're that tall. Um, oh, that's the Shamit reverse. I'm going to show that later. But yeah, on this one, oh yeah, this is where Wemby was. Can't remember how it got to this point. I think there was some kind of action where.
So he's completely ignoring Josh Hart, right? That's like part of what's going on with the
Yeah,
geometry of the court here.
and then Josh Hart's wide open for three, and Wemby closes out from the post. He's literally not guarding anybody.
Yeah.
And closes out. And I think people were arguing he probably should not have closed out on Hart and just stay to get the rebound. Bet that he was going to miss. I think Wemby does pride himself on like being.
He's like, I don't want to just give this guy like
Yeah.
Josh Hart is a guy you still want to like close. You want to try to offer some kind of contest. He's not like who was it last round? I mean, he was kind of fully ignoring Caruso, to be honest. I actually think that was a worse side. Maybe he's like burned by that. But there were other players where I'm like, okay, I guess they just literally don't care if this player shoots. That's how he was guarding Terrence Shannon Jr. in the Wolves series for sure. I'm trying to think of all the guys on the Thunder. They didn't care about Kenrich Williams. Maybe I'm thinking of the Wolves series then. I remember like Terrence Shannon Jr. I was like, he's made some shots. And they're like, we don't care. We're not closing out on him.
Yeah.
But Josh Hart's not quite that level of guy. Like that level of guy is a guy that is going to hesitate on the shot or just not take it. Josh Hart will take the shot. So you want to close out. Yeah.
But even if you are in a position to rebound, this is where like Wemby kind of got caught too low under the basket, and then Cat's able to kind of just like get it and put it back up and in. He had another one like that where he got it, and maybe it was this one. Oh, like even on that. So I didn't really talk about this on the last clip, but on that Hart missed three, Cat gets the rebound and then gets an and one when he puts the layup back up, which was great. And then the last thing I wanted to show was
and I think the Spurs have really. It's funny that they're like the number one defensive rebounding team in the league in the regular season. I wonder where they sit in the playoffs. But this is something that we talked about in the Thunder series is like, especially in these like super small Spurs lineups, they're very susceptible to teams that are going to crash the offensive glass. And the Knicks are absolutely a team that's going to do that. And the Thunder were doing it for stretches. The Spurs were able to clean it up in some of those, like the second halves of some of those games. But it was still like, it's still a problem. Like, yeah, when Wemby's like out on the perimeter like that, they don't have another power forward. And even when he's on the interior, it's like he doesn't have any help really boxing people out. So they rely almost exclusively on like speed and athleticism to have this defensive rebounding edge. And I think that is vulnerable to a team like the Knicks. We'll see if the Spurs can clean it up for enough of the series to make it to mitigate that issue. But, I mean, it's not a crazy number, but the Knicks did have 10 offensive rebounds in this game, including 4 for Karl Anthony Towns. And I mean, the fact that Josh Hart only had 2 is maybe like the Spurs kind of pat themselves on the back for that, because 2 out of his 15 rebounds were offensive rebounds. But it's definitely something they need to worry about, especially I thought Cornette was not good on the glass.
No, he wasn't really good at anything.
I know, but they actually had a decent first stint. It was that second half stint that was a real killer, and that was more because like Cat was in attack mode. But I also think in the Wemby super small ball minutes are kind of a problem. And Harrison Barnes, I think, barely played in this game. He played 12 minutes. That's not that bad. But it's not like he's rebounding. I think they need another forward, man. Like right now, Julian Champagny is playing power forward. Like,
it is interesting. And getting some OG Anunoby love in the chat. We didn't talk about him, but he did have like a big part of why the Knicks had a little run to get back in the game. And speaking of rebounding, like he was crashing the offensive glass and drawing like fouls, just like trying to get in there and getting pushed, and then he hit 2 threes in a row. But okay, Cat, his offense, Wemby's sticking to him. Like we love plays with Jokic where defenders are not willing to help off of him, and this gets Landry Shamet a reverse layup. Cat doesn't even have to do anything, just kind of, he does get Vassell pretty good on this screen to where there's a lot of separation, and Wemby doesn't help at all. He's going to stay with Cat. And you're like, Landry Shamet's getting a reverse layup in the NBA Finals when you have Wembanyama right there to possibly help him block it, but he doesn't.
I was shocked that Landry attempted that. And Wemby was probably shocked too, to be fair. I think he was probably so stunned. And he's probably like, that's never going to happen again. I would send you to the shadow realm before I let that happen again.
Yeah. So I think Wemby will have to, he looked pissed after the game. He's a very competitive person. As much as I don't really enjoy Wemby, he does wear his heart on his sleeve. He takes things personally. I think he's going to come out and try to be super aggressive and not let little kind of misreads on defense happen. I mean, he's still working on his offensive game, but his defense should be more sound, and he shouldn't just have little lapses like this. So we'll see.
The Knicks scored 104 points. I mean, part of that was, to be fair, like they didn't really shoot that well from 30% from 3. They also took fewer than I expected. I thought they were getting a lot of shots in that first half. They were on track for over 40. So the fact they didn't hit that is like maybe something to look at, that the Spurs are kind of reimposing themselves on the Knicks defensively, and the way they're doing it is sort of limiting those 3-point attempts, which is a big part of how the Knicks really like to win the math game. If we look at their frequency, they used to be like a bottom 10 team in terms of their 3-point frequency. They were very much a like 2-pointers or being very efficient on their jump shots, but they moved up to the top 12 in 3-point frequency, so it's a much bigger part of their shot diet now under Mike Brown. So that's going to be another like thing to just, look out for. They didn't shoot efficiently in this game. They shot 31%. So maybe as a Spurs fan, you're like, what the hell?
Yeah. I mean, the Knicks came out super cold and rusty, and I think they were just kind of like afraid because it was the finals and they hadn't played in a bit. They swept the conference finals. I chalked it up to that, but I'm hoping that they shoot better next game and it's like a little bit easier for them. But I don't know. You're not guaranteed to do that.
Will's like, I just want the Knicks to win. I don't want a long series.
Yeah. They got the first game though. That's a big one. But I'm definitely like, it's still anyone's series. It's not like the Knicks have this in the bag or anything, because I think the Spurs can do a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Especially offensively. Like, I just think there's a lot of meat on the bone on that end of the floor. And I'll be curious to see how the Knicks continue to try to counter some of what the Spurs do to adjust. Anyway, we are. Oh, go ahead.
Poppin did want to see one cat assist, so I'll show one here, where Shamet gets another layup just off of kind of like a little slip, Champagne falling asleep. But otherwise, he had 4 assists. It wasn't like he had a ton of playmaking in the game, but he did pretty good. Yep.
Just keep limiting the mistakes, Cat, and you can have a lot of impact. Has Wemby had 2 stinkers in a row? They lost games 2 and 3 against OKC, but I don't think he was bad in both of them. I thought he was pretty bad in game 3. But game 2, I thought he was pretty good. It just wasn't quite like game 1 Wemby last series. So he had 2 stinkers in a row. Probably not, but it's hard to tell because some of the Spurs games have been. Oh, this wasn't really like a Wemby game. Although every game's a Wemby game because he's like ever present defensively, and you can't really deny that. And I don't even think he was bad defensively in this game. It just wasn't. We're not like completely shutting off your water. So, that's maybe the side of the ball that the Spurs even focus on more because they're like, I don't know how much we can improve our offense, but we know our defense can be like, clamps. All right, we are at almost 2 hours and 40 minutes. So, if you guys have made it this far, you seek professional help, but also know that we appreciate you.
Yeah.
If you like our content, please remember to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, as well as the notification bell. Leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on socials. And always remember that winning is fun and losing sucks.